One sunny summer day, a man asked the princess if she was planning to go out anywhere today. What? She asked her interlocutor, stunned. He asked how about taking a little walk. They say that light exercise or a walk after eating is good for your health, he explained thoughtfully. The princess answered, but she is a sinner, and just allowing her to dine here is already too much. So today, she thought, it would be right if she took the time to introspect. Self-analysis, he repeated with a grin. And with observation, he noted that she must understand that this self-analysis had already been going on for 2 weeks. Last time she said it was too hot outside to go outside. And before that, she fell asleep on the comics. I asked if she had at least apologized to the artist who wrote them. She laughed nervously. The man asked if she really planned to do this kind of self-analysis. She asked if he really needed to ask about such a thing. And she screamed at him, all because home is the best place in the world, and she absolutely does not want to go out anywhere. But in reality, she wouldn't dare say such a thing out loud. She wanted to say, because she dared to remember the noble comics that his lordship had prepared for her. With her huge ass, she should be punished for this. She asked if he didn't think so. Any outside observer might think he was being too harsh with her, the Duke remarked. No. She asked, not to be misunderstood. In fact, she felt better when she was punished. She is simply one of those who has an exceptional sense of responsibility, and, given her sinful nature, even breathing the same air as his lordship seems like a crime. Not at all, he replied irritably. An unsatisfactory answer. No matter how hard she tried, he stood his ground. So why does he keep trying to take her outside? Wasn't he the one who told her to sit quietly in the room before? Taking dessert from the table, she said, "It's time for the sinner of the salt house to return to her chambers." She was already suffocating from the feeling of the view, so now is the best time. All the best. His lordship extended his hand forward and asked the girl to wait a little, but the door had already slammed shut. Having escaped from the man and rushed into the room, the girl immediately fell onto her favorite bed. How good, she thought wearily. After all, a crib is the best thing in the world. Wait a minute. He's not going to chase her down to take back the snacks she took. The cake is very high in calories, which means she can live by staying in the room and not eating until tomorrow. If she just lies in bed, the calories will burn slowly, and because of the low speed, she won't feel dizzy. Thick curtains, high-calorie food, a room perfect for a recluse, a blissful life with maximum pleasure. This is what it is like. Imperial imprisonment, the Empress against her will, that is the name of the novel into which she moved, its heroine Lilia Salt. She was a princess who was praised and said that she could have become a king if she had been born a man. But after Kona became possessed by Crown Prince Raiden, she was kidnapped and locked up, and that's where she ended up. And so, when she moved into the house, Lilia yelled at her that she wouldn't get a crumb of food until she finished with the documents. Amelia said she would work all night if necessary, but asked to be allowed to eat at least a slice of bread. "You worthless thing!" Lily screamed, asking if she still dared to snap back. "Do as you were ordered." Her half-sister, Amelia, a minor character in the novel, is enslaved for 3 months, suffering from overwork and terrible conditions. So the girl had to spend the night working again, but still, this time everything was different. As soon as she started to read the documents, a man snuck up behind her and shut her mouth. He asked Princess Lily to be quiet if she did not want a scar to remain on her beautiful face. "The princess is his," the man said to himself. "Now he will knock her out and take her with him." But she was not Princess Lily. She died of overwork and moved into the novel, but continued to work. She was still overworked like an office worker, and now she had been kidnapped. She was shaking with tears, sitting somewhere where her kidnapper had brought her, but then the bag was removed from her head. She decided that she definitely wouldn't die like that, and having the opportunity to speak, began to apologize and shout that she was not Lily Salt. Amelia tried to convince her captor that she was just a servant, no, even a slave. And he closed her mouth so that she could not explain anything. The man was taken aback and became worried. Amelia knew nothing and will continue to know nothing, so she asked to let her go already. So she sat alone, crying among the men in the room, when suddenly one of them asked the assistant what was going on here. What a handsome man this is, she thought. He looked like the main character, although the main character of the novel is blonde. So he is a villain, she decided, and the kidnapper began to make excuses. She used the princess's seal, so he thought she was real. The assistant said thoughtfully, "It seems like she is lying to them to survive, wants to hide her true identity." "What a pity," he remarked sternly. But Amelia didn't lie and continued to shout about it to everyone, shedding tears. She confirmed that she did the work for the princess, but if she didn't do it, she wouldn't give her food or sleep. So she was just trying to survive, the girl insisted. It wasn't a servant's crime against the master, was it? What kind of mess is this? The unknown, but apparently the main man, inhaled tiredly. The monocle-wearing assistant admitted that something seemed strange, and the main man asked what he was talking about. And after listening and thinking about his words, the handsome man glanced at Amelia and said, "They can always check." He ordered to lock this useless girl somewhere if she wants to survive, then let her be quiet. Watching him go, she thought, so they won't kill her now, which means she managed to avoid the death flag. And surprisingly, life in captivity turned out to be quite comfortable for Amelia. Could she really sleep more than 4 hours a day? They brought her food into her room even though she did nothing. Just think, being kidnapped and locked up is so cool. In the novel it sounded just terrible, but who would have thought? In the original story, all of the princess's great achievements were things she did behind the scenes. But she just has a pretty face without a drop of talent. Calling her a worthless person, Lilia asked if she thought she could just live in her father's house and forced her to work. In her past life, she worked herself to death, so now in this one too. For others, life became much better after resettlement, romances with hot guys, success and all that. Well, it seems that was her fate. At least Amelia was good at her job. She should have prepared for the coming famine knowing the original could make her job easier. But this backfired. The princess was indignant that she hadn't told her why she had increased imports, since she couldn't answer the question herself. What? Amelia was surprised, because she had explained to her that preparing for famine would help provide people with a livelihood. And Lily, getting heated up, shouted irritably, and how was she supposed to know this? The girl was on edge and wondered why her stupid bosses were always angry with her. But in her past life, nor in her current life, her situation has not changed one bit. Only this place has become the most comfortable that she has ever had. If only she could stay here forever, never going outside, she thought then. But then the man called Amelia Salt to a conversation, calling her the second princess of the Salt Kingdom. Then he asked if this was really her real identity, and not Princess Lily Salt at all. Look at that. He found out about everything much faster than she thought. So is it really possible that her peaceful life will end like this? She confirmed that this was true, but he probably wouldn't believe it if she said that she was treated no better than a slave. A nervous laugh escaped her lips, and the man, having examined the obtained information again, came closer. And lighting up the room with a sly grin, he asked how about her trying to convince him. What the second princess, Amelia Salt, asked in shock. Recently, the Salt Kingdom has been acting strangely, with Princess Lilia seemingly spying on the Cleton Empire's plans. This made him incredibly angry, the Duke admitted, but in recent days. He took a document out of his jacket pocket and showed it to Amelia for her consideration. It was a trade certificate used by the Kingdom of Salt, which is why the Grand Duke was giving it to her. But then she realized that it was stated here that all the wheat that she had bought to prepare for the famine would be sold back to the Empire. Lily, what a fool you are. If she sells it now, the people of the kingdom will suffer later. No. What about the Empire? They already have a lot of wheat, so why would they buy it back, trying to increase the amount? She gasped in shock, and noticing this, the Duke asked if there were any problems. This, Amelia said almost stutteringly, this is a scam. He sighed with satisfaction and asked why she decided so. This seal, it was never used in trade with the Empire, which means that an unknown trading group was involved. It is a trading scam aimed at intercepting goods and fees mid-process. True, he confirmed coldly. Any person responsible for such work would understand that. They received a report from a spy in the Kingdom of Salt that Princess Lilia, contrary to her reputation, was not at all interested in business. So, if the girl's words are true, then the person who drove him crazy all the time. It wasn't Princess Lily at all, but then. He asked Princess Amelia to tell him how she managed to unravel the Empire's plans. The Duke asked if she had planted a spy without leaving any visible trace. A spy, she thought. No, that was not the point. It's simply because the original novel she read had the Empire's plan laid out in detail. She just didn't want the innocent people of the Salt Kingdom to suffer too much. And then Amelia, looking at the Duke with pity, said that she really didn't know anything. It was her fault that she worked hard as she was ordered, so could he let her go at least this once? Chikaya, he asked, so she would prefer to die rather than tell the secrets of the kingdom. The Salt Kingdom has many loyal people, even if they are illegitimate children. It's not like that. She just asked for mercy. In the Empire, He Who Lies, the Duke asked if she knew what fate awaited them next. Torture is usually brutal torture, and if they continue to refuse to talk, their mouths would be torn to shreds. But even if she said that she was an ordinary office plankton who had moved here, he would not believe her. At this rate, she will either be killed or tortured. Her life as a displaced person is already at rock bottom. It can't get any worse. She did not dare ask him to send her back, but she asked permission to ask something. And, receiving permission, she said that as he sees it, she is one of those who really works hard. Therefore, if he spares her, she will serve him forever without payment, faithfully, sparing no effort. He ordered his subordinate to take her away from here, and he immediately appeared for her, not daring to disobey the order. And he said that the price of lying to the Grand Duke would be paid under the harshest conditions. It can't be, Amelia thought in horror. By harsh conditions he means a torture chamber. But instead of a dark and damp basement, she was placed in a cozy room with thick curtains, which was wonderful. It's a little cramped in here, but since she's just going to be lying in bed anyway, it doesn't matter. How well everything worked out for a homebody like her. It's the best thing in the world. For a while no one will disturb her, so she will enjoy this confinement. At this time, Lilia had a terrible headache just from reading. She couldn't concentrate even for 10 minutes. If only her brothers hadn't died one after another without achieving anything, her father wouldn't have put his hopes on a fool like her. It's her time to play her role. There are rumors that people from the Empire are planning to kidnap her, and there is unrest in the palace. If they see her working as usual, they will calm down. She has had enough time to learn from Emily. It will not be difficult. But Lily was not nearly as smart. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't compare to that girl. It would all be Amelia's fault if the illegitimate girl had not been kidnapped so easily. She forced herself to calm down. Reading the letter from her beloved Ryden should help her focus. And indeed, he was the only one who considered her the wisest and most beautiful woman on the continent. Honestly, even Ryden's letters are hard to read, but the kind Ryden would understand someone like her. She will definitely finish writing her answer today. There are only 2 sentences left. At the same time, the Grand Duke asked his assistant how she was. The man replied that she had not shown any resistance or attempt to escape. For someone who had previously held real power in place of Princess Lily, there was no way an aristocrat like her would be able to adapt to this. There was no way he could have adapted to something like that, but she bore it with fortitude and even looked like she was enjoying it immensely. But still, most of the aristocrats are begging for release after spending 3 days in prison, so she won't last long. Should he report this to the Crown Prince? Should they say that Lilia's kidnapping failed, but they were able to find out the truth? There are no signs of hard labor on her body, making it hard to believe that she is a slave. Her fair skin and blue eyes are typical of the royal family. She was as beautiful as Princess Lilia. The reason why Crown Prince Ryden was so obsessed with Lilia was because that she has both talent and beauty is simply perfect. But if what that girl said is true, then the Duke ordered the one who actually suited the Crown Prince's tastes to report that the kidnapping had failed. But he shouldn't say anything about Princess Amelia. The assistant asked in surprise why. The Grand Duke of the Empire explained that the Crown Prince did not need to know about her, and, opening the curtains, looking at the blue sky, he said, there is something he wanted to check. The next time Amelia opened her eyes, she saw ink and documents in front of her. Why was she working now? She thought she had been kidnapped and locked up and could finally rest. Just don't tell her that this heavenly life was a dream. Seriously, just an ordinary extra. Did she really think her life would change just because she was in a novel? Amelia jumped up from her seat in alarm and looked back. A voice behind her asked her not to worry. In this life, she too is destined to die of overwork and will be locked in her office until she dies of exhaustion. Buried under a mountain of paperwork, she will die senselessly again. Sleep, bringing her breathing in order, Amelia asked in fright. Thank God this is a dream. It seems that reading random books out of boredom causes very wild dreams. A comic book would have come in handy right now. Her life in lockdown was so comfortable that it had practically become boring. If she was missing something, she wouldn't even try to escape, but would just lie there like a seal all day. This is some kind of trick to make him lower his guard and she will try to escape, a pathetic ruse. When will this guy stop coming? She assured him that she was not going to run away and asked him to stop coming if he was busy, but he was devoted to His Grace the Grand Duke, and he ordered her to stop trying to tempt him. She wondered if she should just laugh at such moments. Today he came to deliver a message from the Duke. His lordship says that she seems to be quite happy with life here. But since the conditions are luxurious enough to satisfy the princess's demands, it is only fair that she pay for it. The conditions are indeed comfortable, but to call them luxurious is far from it, and since when has kidnapping and imprisonment required payment from the victim? She asked how much she should pay, and then he threw the documents at her. These were documents for the construction of a dam in the Grand Duchy, which had been postponed. His lordship wanted her to find out the reason for the delay and come up with ways to solve the problem. And why exactly, her Amelia asked awkwardly, wondering if it was too important to just give to a kidnapped prisoner. He recalled her words recently in the Duke's office and asked if there were any other objections, but there were none. But for reference, the deadline was 2 weeks. If she doesn't complete it within that time, she can imagine the consequences herself. She thought she would live a cozy, tragic life locked up, but instead she became a prisoner who was forced to work. In essence, the problem was solved. If it was really so, because of whom the emperor had often had a headache before, she would come up with a brilliant future. And if not, then she will have to pay for lying to him, won't she? Suddenly, the conversation between the advisor and the Duke was interrupted by the butler, who brought a message from Princess Amelia. There was no way she could have come to a decision in such a short time. He assumed she had sent a surrender letter. Or maybe she's finally willing to reveal information about the spies in exchange for a pardon. Wait. There was another envelope in the message. She would appreciate it if they sent it to the address below. The common people who worked on the construction of the dam could no longer bear such conditions and heat. Surely no one would come to their aid, and as if unknown forces had heard him, after a week of work, they heard the clatter of hooves. People who looked like mercenaries were rushing towards them, and the Duke's assistant who had arrived with them went down to the workers. Starting today, mercenaries from the Black Eagle Corps of the Illiman Confederation will assist in the construction of the dam. His lordship ordered that once they had completed the transfer of affairs, they could return to their lands. They could hire cooks from among women who were already actively working, these names being widows and single mothers. They are barely making ends meet. If they are hired as replacements, they will not have to call cooks from the estate. This will also help resolve the issue of providing food to the Black Eagle Corps. Amelia asked if there was anything else they might need. Then Oscar asked, stunned, how the hell she managed to do that? How did she manage to hire the Black Eagle Corps, which only worked for King Salt or according to the project of their emperor? Then the second princess happily explained that it was all thanks to his lordship. He deceived Salt and bought a huge supply of wheat on the cheap, and the kingdom suffered huge financial losses cleaning up the mess. This meant they had to cut back on the mercenaries they had hired, and the mercenaries were desperate for new work. Zeneva Golbro of the Illiman Federation, to whom she sent the letter, is the daughter of the Count, the owner of the Black Eagle, and the chief negotiator. And Amelia offered her a deal she couldn't refuse. Oscar asked about the details of the deal. She removed the points they didn't like, kept the ones they preferred, and with the Grand Duke's seal, she would never refuse. The Duke's assistant asked how she could be sure of that, as Amelia thought with a nervous smile, probably because she exchanged hundreds of letters with the Illiman Confederation and with that damn complicated woman. In any case, she delivered the result they wanted within 2 weeks, so the deadline was not missed. So she hopefully asked Amelia if she could now return to her room. Oscar was impressed. Only someone with serious management experience could have come up with such an employment plan. She clearly had a talent for this kind of work. The transfer went so smoothly that he wanted to learn from her. Thinking about this whole situation around the second princess, he became really interested. If she is so smart and capable, then why doesn't she even try to escape? Who knows? The assistant answered his master thoughtfully. Perhaps what she wants is here. And he made the bold assumption that this could be information about the Empire. The next morning, the Duke called Amelia to him and asked what she wanted. Since she had helped with the affairs of the Grand Duchy, he thought that in return he should fulfill one of her wishes. For example, a daily walk or a tour of the estate, something like that, he said suspiciously. Feeling that the Duke would not give in, Amelia thought she already had a good room, what else? Or perhaps, she wondered, was it something else the Duke had asked to be allowed to hear? Then the girl realized that this was her chance. She was very comfortable but, frankly speaking, a little bored. And to improve the quality of life of a homebody, he really needed something. She wanted to live in a room filled to the brim with comics. "Comics?" the Grand Duke asked her again, alarmed. "Yes," she exclaimed. The books in her room were so boring that she was dying to read comics. But, as luck would have it, the Duke, breaking all the young girl's dreams, asked what it was. Only now did she remember that this was a world inside a novel, and naturally, they didn't know what comics were. Will Amelia be able to explain to the Northern Grand Duke of the romantic fantasy world what comics are and convince him? However, after some time, there were many people in the duchy who were unfamiliar to Amelia. Oscar introduced Mr. Brown, the former artist, to the Emperor, and the others behind him, the art teachers at the academy. The princess quietly asked Oskazar why such outstanding people had come here. "Well," replied the Duke's assistant, "it's all for the purpose of creating a comic book." Wasn't she the one who said that comics are a book that expresses content through pictures? That is why he gathered the best artists of the empire. Would such talented people really publish comics just for her to read? Amelia felt remorse, and Winchester noticed that she looked dissatisfied, and he suggested that she might want something more. "Come," said his lordship, "she as a princess can speak freely." "No," she cried, "nothing at all." "Excellent, then," he asked. "Make sure that you explain everything to them well. What exactly are you explaining?" she asked timidly. "How to create a comic, of course," he answered, putting Amelia either in an awkward position or in a stupor. Brown presented one of his paintings and asked if she wanted him to paint it like that. She suggested simply removing the details, he agreed, as this would result in lighter shades, the latest trend on the continent. Mr. Robin thought that this style was copied from the barbarians. Cedric said that this was nonsense, it was evolution. They were already starting to quarrel. Amelia asked them not to go that far. The main thing here was to tell the story through art. Simply put, putting a story into a picture, a new kind of art, they exclaimed. It takes on a deep meaning. How powerful. Amelia only had enough strength to laugh nervously, because everything they understood was completely wrong. A few days later, the artist presented her with a comic strip depicting the great achievements of Grand Duke Samuel. Born from an egg, the young Grand Duke, who was 5 years old, breathed fire and defeated monsters. But as she continued reading all this, Amelia realized that this was just an exaggerated biography of the hero. "What do you think?" Brown asked the lady. The Grand Duke said that it would be she who would give the final assessment. She chose her words well. The pictures were of very high quality, and the development of the plot was impressive. They put their whole soul into portraying the great-grandfathers of the Grand Duke, the key point being that the hero has undeniable strength. Is the Grand Duke just trying to tell her not to mess with him and she just said she wanted to read a comic book? But then the princess suggested that if they changed the goal a little, Cedric asked what she meant. The purpose of a comic is to amuse, so do they really think the biography of the first great duke is funny? Isn't it more important to read about his achievements than to seek entertainment? Art driven solely by interest is considered low grade. They couldn't afford to use the artists who had gathered there for some kind of entertainment. "But isn't the point of art to bring joy?" she asked, approaching from a different angle. After all, people started drawing and made a profession out of it to bring joy to people, but the room fell into an awkward silence. Brown told the lady that after spending so much time in the field they seemed to have lost their original passion. She was right. They first picked up a brush because it was fun, but somewhere along the way they started teaching about the greatness of art. They wanted to brand themselves with this art that brings joy to the audience. That's what comics really are. After these words, the other artists agreed with Brown and the lady, and, inspired, asked what she wanted them to do. And Amelia said she thought she could come up with a funny story for them, but there was something she wanted to ask. Opening the book, she asked the men who had drawn the sketches for this page. A shy girl was brought to the princess. She introduced herself as Ashley, Master Robin's apprentice, and heard that she wanted to see her. Amelia greeted the girl happily and said that she had heard that she was the one who had done the sketches for this page. Yes, she admitted. In 18 years she had never completed a single full-fledged work, and this time she had barely managed to help. Suddenly she asked in fright if there was something wrong with her part of the job. Everyone says they've never seen such strange sketches before, and if the project fails, it's all her fault. That's not true, Amelia interrupted her. That's the only thing that's remarkable about this comic. It was her sketch. Ashley couldn't believe her ears when she heard it, but it was the only page that looked like a comic book. Compared to the official work, the framing and positioning of the shot are simply perfect. And so Emily told Ashley that she wanted to trust her with the most important part of this comic. Ashley was caught up by the academy students. They heard that the young lady had called her to her. The bully asked what she told her, whether she ordered her to abandon all subsequent projects. No, Ashley admitted modestly. The young lady asked her to take responsibility for the shot. However, the other students took the princess's compliment as a reason to mock the unsuccessful artist. As for the main illustrations, she could charge more because he can handle them among all the students. He has the best skills. Ever since his time at the academy, he had been called a child prodigy, unlike someone who hadn't moved an inch in ages. Frankly speaking, he thought she could get that lady's patronage. Without such a person, she would soon be kicked out and die of hunger. Try your best. Who knows, maybe in 20 years she will be able to hold an exhibition in some seedy corner of the empire. But even after all the nasty words from her classmates, Ashley remembered that the lady actually believed in her talent. A talent that even she herself doesn't believe in, a frame director in comics, was fired up by Ashley's motivation. Entering the Duke's office again, Amelia asked if she could find out why she had been summoned again. He heard that the princess had been very busy with the comic book project lately, and asked if she was sure that she didn't need anything else. Amelia was hesitant to talk about the difficulties she had encountered, and she asked if it wasn't too much. Could she have a couple of extra appetizers? The Duke watched the princess, saw her nervousness. He believed that she needed something more. So the only thing she wanted was snacks and comics. She begged him not to look at her like that. And she couldn't just say outright that she wanted to live her life alone in her room. She asked if she had made a mistake in something. Sighing, Winchester said he had something to give her and asked her to come in. And, seeing the man entering the office, Amelia froze in bewilderment. The girl in the maid's costume walked forward and joyfully greeted the mistress. "Who is this?" asked Amelia. The girl introduced herself as Lolita and said that from today on she would be her assistant. Radiating 100% extrovert energy, Lolita talked to Emily, asked what she could call her and about her first impressions. She was looking forward to serving the lady, so the thing he would give her was this man. "If she needs anything, ask Lolita without hesitation," the Duke said. "She just asked for an extra snack, so why did he assign a person to her?" Emily thanked. Lolita was glad to be her assistant. Everyone was interested to know about their new guest, and she felt relieved to see that she was kind. Lolita seemed to be answering her questions from her thoughts, and during the monologue she realized that the Duke wanted her eardrums to burst. The gist of the monologue was that she was an unknown guest among the staff, personally invited by the Duke of Winchester. And Lolita was assigned to her under the pretext of serving, but in fact, she is here to keep an eye on her, of course. She asked what Miss planned to do today and how Lolita could help her. Amelia asked her for a favor, actually. It was just in time as she had something on her mind. "Just tell me," Lolita exclaimed enthusiastically, as if she was ready to rush into battle. Apprentice artists gathered at the estate, following Lady Emily's orders, and Ashley was to lead the process. This is a new story that the young lady has prepared for them, and Ashley has prepared a storyboard based on it. After leafing through the papers, Sirius shouted, "What the hell is this? This frame only had a background." They asked if it was because she couldn't draw people that she wanted them to draw the background, and they criticized her perspective. Why should they listen to her? She's always at the bottom if anyone needs to lead them. It's the best student, Sirius. Ashley, frightened by such pressure, understood all the indignation of her classmates. Lolita followed most of this conversation, memorizing important aspects for her report. As the lady had feared, it did not seem as if any of them were listening to Mistress Ashley, and they even dismissed her judgment, saying it was done out of pity. As she thought, since Ashley was recommended by the so-called suspicious young lady, naturally they would not believe her abilities. "In that case, they just need to do everything differently," Lolita asked in surprise. "Let's go visit the Duke," the second princess of the Salt Kingdom confidently stated. The master's students asked if they wanted to organize a competition for the position of shot director. "Yes," she replied, since it seemed that everyone was having difficulty accepting Mrs. Ashley, who had been recommended to her. They will compare the comic drawn by Ms. Ashley with one drawn by another artist, and the one who does the best work will take the director's place. If a leader is chosen in this way, then everyone must have the desire to follow him. Sirius asked, who will be the judge? If a person who prefers a certain style were to judge, wouldn't the result be unfair? Naturally, the princess replied, the assessment must come from a person whom everyone recognizes. And that person will be the Duke of Winchester himself, the girl announced. The Duke of Winchester will personally act as judge. Many of the students were worried. However, Sirius thought this was their chance to impress him. Once his lordship saw his work, he would immediately understand that he was the best. However, if they find themselves accepting the result, they must leave the duchy, whether they really agree or not. Sirius agreed proudly, wanting to do a better job, while Ashley cringed in disappointment, accepting her loss. How interesting, said the Duke, that the princess's first request was to become a judge at an art competition. She was terribly sorry to have disturbed a man of his position, and infinitely grateful for his generous assistance. Just words, Winchester asked. Emily apologized and asked if she should offer anything in return. Well, the man said, looking at the girl whose pretty face caught his eye at that moment. Winchester said that he would consider it his duty, the princess asked again in surprise. The man said he was helping her of his own free will, since she was now a princess. A rather useful man, after all, he continued. He will decide later what he wants. The Duke of Winchester grinned smugly and walked forward. Amelia was scared. It's good that the young lady arranged everything herself, the boys discussed. The Duke will definitely choose Sirius's work. In fact, anyone with eyes will tell you that Ashley's painting is a complete horror. The upset girl left the room where the boys were working, and suddenly Amelia called out to her. She asked her beloved why she had such a depressed expression on her face. Are there really any problems with work? No, Ashley answered hesitantly. That's not true. Whether this competition was really the right choice, now everyone will see how inept she is, and it will happen before the eyes of the Duke himself. Ultimately, it was because of her that the lady was now in trouble, the insecure girl said. But she asked the Duke to be the judge, so that the public would recognize her. His approval would know much more than hers. This can't be true. Ashley downplayed her abilities, but Amelia asked him to just trust her. Soon, everyone in the duchy would see how talented she really was. She sincerely admired her work. But Ashley interrupted and said that she was fine. She was already happy that she had been able to earn the lady's recognition. A worthless person like her doesn't deserve anyone's recognition. She felt dejected. Amelia no longer knew how to encourage Ashley and make her believe in herself. Then, squatting down next to her, she apologized, realizing that she had put too much pressure on her. In return, she offered to tell something about herself. She had always been someone who was incapable of anything. The one who doesn't even know what she wants to do. The one who preferred to lie in bed all day. But she, Mrs. Ashley, was running towards her dream all this time, albeit unconsciously, but she never gave up. She continued to work hard. She deserved respect. Amelia was sure that one day her efforts would shine. To ensure fairness, the names of the participants were omitted as the Oscar announced the start of the test. He asked the Duke to read both books and choose the color of the cover he preferred. The artists were worried about the results of evaluating the work of their students, and Amelia was with them. The participants themselves reacted differently. One was confident, the other was worried, while the Duke opened another book. And having made his choice, he slammed the book with the red ribbon and asked who had drawn it. It immediately became clear to the artists whose book the Duke had chosen, and Sirius was outraged by the choice, while Ashley seemed to still be afraid of being scolded. The Duke would have liked to hear the opinions of others, so the artists of the Empire gathered for reading. But each of them liked the book with the red ribbon. It seemed more meaningful. His lordship agreed with this. The book with the blue ribbon had bright pictures, but it did not make one want to read further. But with the red ribbon, even though the picture is black and white, the necessary details stand out and everything looks alive. For someone who knows little about comics, his criticism was very detailed. The Duke has a keen eye. It is clear that the book with the red ribbon cares about its readers. So the Duke finally announced that his choice was the book with the red ribbon. He asked who the person was who had drawn her. Raising her hand, she stood up awkwardly and introduced herself as Ashley Barnes. A man asked if Miss Barnes had a sponsor in order to invest in the girl. Unfortunately, Ashley replied, she didn't have a sponsor yet, so she did everything on her own. Unexpectedly for those present, Winchester expressed a desire to become her first sponsor. Talented people deserved opportunities, he said, and the students immediately started talking, making a noise. Unable to stay on her feet from the feelings that overwhelmed her, she thanked His Grace, the Duke of Winchester. Once Ashley took over the leadership of the student artists, everything went smoothly. The teachers had no idea that Ashley had a talent for something like this. Wasn't she the one they kept around because they couldn't handle her persistence? He said with pride that he was worried about Mr. Robin because of his bad reputation, but his fears turned out to be in vain. And so, after some time, Ashley provided Amelia with a comic based on her own story. Finally, from the many ideas in her head, she chose the story that best suited the style of these artists. I pitched them a story for a romantic horror comic, and I wonder how they ended up bringing it to life. And indeed, from the first pages, it became clear that she was looking at a masterpiece. The quality of the pictures was striking from the very first page. And the plot kept you wondering what would happen next. Horror is a difficult genre, but they did it so well. Ashley, who was in charge of the whole team, asked what she thought, and Emily asked if they could celebrate by having dinner together. Ashley didn't understand what it meant. Usually companies throw dinner to show that they care about their employees, but now that she thought about it, she would just give them extra pay because what she read was not just good, it was amazing. While the team was celebrating the completion of the project, Emily had another great idea. The reason her heart was pounding so hard wasn't from running or anything like that. That the man in front of her is so handsome that she falls in love. Yeah, right, never. She was terribly nervous because she had a very big request. It might work out, maybe. Although the first impression was terrible, he assigned Lolita to her and even treated her to dessert. No, if she asks for something, she will end up owing even more, and he will make her do something weird to pay him back. While reading the comic, Winchester couldn't help but notice her nervousness and realized that she wanted to say something. She wanted to get out of it, but he told her to talk. She waved it off, saying that it was just a stupid thought, but he stood his ground. And then Amelia carefully asked his lordship if he thought it was possible to make money from this. What did she mean? He asked, as if cautiously. But it would be a shame for a comic like this if only he saw its quality. It would also be a shame if artists with such talent disappeared without going down in history and without making a name for themselves. Emily asked how about selling comics so everyone in the Empire could enjoy them. But this proposal seemed to go against all the Duke's plans, or rather, he had not even thought about such an outcome. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Salt, King Berg was shouting, "She needs the head for decoration. Can't she see the difference between the seals?" They passed the seal from an unknown merchant without any verification, and everything disappeared without a trace on the way to Cleaton. And why was it wheat, the price of which had skyrocketed? They were simply fulfilling documents approved by the princess, he said. What, are you so mad that you dared to tarnish the honor of his daughter, the treasure of Salt, but your majesty? He stated the facts, and the king shouted and ordered that this criminal, who had insulted the honor of the royal family, be taken away. It was unfair, he cried. He was only following His Majesty's orders to trust Princess Lily. After listening to the man, King Solta ordered everyone to leave in a cold tone. Besides Princess Lily, she apologized in private that she was busy with work and couldn't make the right decision. She admitted that she was too overwhelmed. She really wanted to succeed. She really did, but her voice was trembling. When Amelia was here, something like this would never have happened. Is Lilia really that incapable compared to an illegitimate child? No, it was all because Amelia was always on her side, which made her complacent. If she could handle it herself, she would become better, the king believed. He said not to repeat such a mistake twice. Yes, of course, father, answered the beloved princess. However, alone, she shed tears and wondered why this happened to her. She tried so hard, but no matter how much effort she put in, she couldn't compare to this girl. Why should she, a noble princess, live like her? Perhaps if she had been born as a simple servant like her, she could have learned to strive hard to achieve something. But she was born a princess. Why should such a noble princess like her suffer such humiliation? The princess was suddenly called out. The shining pearl of Salt should not have been shown in such a state. And wiping away her tears, she suddenly looked around asking who, but suddenly froze in surprise. Extending his hand, the man asked if he had arrived at the wrong time. It was Mason Ravioli, her fiancé. A man renowned for his wealth and dignity, but with one fatal flaw, his appearance. Lilia brushed it off, saying that she was just a little nervous about her management work. And then she asked Count Mason what brought him here. It had been a long time since their engagement ceremony, so he thought it was time to discuss their marriage. Considering that His Majesty's mood was already spoiled by diplomatic problems, she thought her marriage would be premature. Mason always respected Her Highness's wishes and asked the princess to have a good rest. Lily snorted, watching him go. Did he really think she would marry a freak like him? The Crown Prince of Cletana is in love with her, so she will soon break off the engagement and become Raiden's wife. As far as she knows, less than 50% of Cleton can read, but even if a person is illiterate, he can understand the context and content of the comic from the pictures, and it is more entertaining. As more people learn to read to understand content, they can expect positive literacy rates. What the hell is she thinking, Winchester thought, looking warily at the princess. A prominent figure who used Princess Lilia as a figurehead and controlled all palace affairs. She doesn't even try to escape, but only did inexplicable things, and now she wants to start her own business. A genius who saw through plans and always acted one step ahead. There must be an ulterior motive behind this woman's actions. To clarify her true goals, perhaps he should play along with her now and ask how she planned to distribute them. Realizing that he agreed, Amelia happily asked how about publishing them in the Empire's newspaper. At first they will pay for the cost and rental space, but once they gain popularity, they will be paid for publishing the comic. And so they can pay the artists a share of the profits. Does she really think that this will bring in significant profits? From the newspaper, Amelia explained, she expected advertising and not profit at all. And later they will start producing and selling the comics themselves, she announced enthusiastically. Then the Duke asked, and the princess froze, thinking for a second. The printing system runs through the Magic Tower, but it's currently experiencing serious problems, Winchester reminded. All the magicians are busy trying to solve them and have even given up earning a living. Amelia remembered this from the plot of the novel, the resolution of the core of the Magic Tower. In the story, Lilia gave them advice, but they did not accept it. The Magic Tower collapsed. All the magicians fell. Trade suffered losses. Food shortages became catastrophic, and countless people died. Amelia did not want to allow this outcome and asked if she could pay a visit to the Magic Tower. She knew the solution from Lilia's original suggestion, but to put it into practice, she would have to go to the Magic Tower. Yes, Amelia said confidently. She wanted to understand the problem and, if possible, come up with a solution. His lordship thought about the request. It was the first time the girl had asked to go out somewhere. A Magic Tower, a distraction to escape to Solt, or she wants to meet someone. Well, he will find out when they are there. The Duke has given his consent to leave. The princess thanked him and thought that he had agreed much more easily than she had expected. Is it possible that this time he won't say scary phrases like, he will follow her and the like? Has his wariness of her eased now that he's become Ashley's sponsor? Perhaps he's more sympathetic to workaholics. Winchester asked if this was all she wanted to see him for. Yes, and Amelia was about to leave. But just before leaving, the girl noticed a huge stack of papers on the Duke's desk. And she returned with the same concern and asked how many days had passed. What? He asked tiredly. She asked how long it had been since he had left his office and guessed that more than a week had passed. This scene reminded her of herself before she died from overwork, and the man was stunned to think that how she found out. After all, she must not be underestimated. He must not let his guard down. Winchester asked hesitantly why she was asking about this. She held out her hand. What is it? And then the second Princess Salt asked if she could look at his hand. Of course, the Duke was taken aback by such an unusual request, but he did not refuse. The girl examined his hand, felt his palm, and asked how he felt. Does he feel some relief from fatigue? He answered sheepishly, it seems so. He asked how he knew about such a thing. Korean office workers suffering from fatigue use any means to stay awake. She replied that it was a folk remedy, but no matter how busy he was with work, he should get as much sleep as he could. And he also takes care of his nutrition. No matter how important the work is, there is nothing more important than his lordship. And she, like a fool, did not understand this until her very death, hoping that no one else would die such a stupid death. Apparently, due to overwork, Winchester's mind was clouded, and he was not able to succumb to the influence of such words. Don't let your guard down. She might be trying to win his favor to find out the Empire's weaknesses. He said he would remember that, and if she had finished her business then. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt a heaviness in his body and lost his balance. Seeing this, Amelia immediately rushed to help. Papers were scattered, coffee was spilled. She said lack of sleep and nutrition can cause headaches and, in severe cases, dizziness. Having caught his lordship Winchester, the girl asked if he was wounded anywhere. Embarrassed by his situation and closeness to a beautiful girl, he was unable to find the words right away. Helping him get up, Amelia wondered what it was, whether he really had a fever. She decided to check this out, but this only embarrassed the Grand Duke even more. He said he was fine. It seemed the princess was the only one who suffered. He suggested thoughtfully. "You don't die from something like that," the girl answered, laughing, "so she's fine. However, overexertion can be deadly, so he must be careful." "Did that mean the princess saved his life?" he asked coldly. He explained that he had to pay for it, and asked her to tell him what she wanted. What she wanted, she asked again. Maybe now she should have asked for snacks, and not people. The girl tormented herself with thoughts. Something came into her head, and Amelia said that she really needed something. It was a weapon made of parthenium. She thought there must be something like it in the Grand Duke's estate. Parthenium was a rare material that was resistant to mana and difficult to process. He asked why she needed it. Amelia replied that she only wanted to borrow it for the trip to the Magic Tower. It will be easier to discuss matters if she uses an artifact that looks impressive. And Winchester answered thoughtfully, he had a hammer made of parthenium. Then she cried out enthusiastically, but the Duke shattered her dreams. He could not give it to her. Technically, she was currently being held captive within the Grand Duchy, and he couldn't give her a weapon. And Winchester wasn't just wrong, but if she really needed to bring it to the Magic Tower, he gave hope again. After all, fortunately, he had a way. To put it simply, Winchester wanted to say that he would go with her to the Magic Tower. He asked if she really thought he would let her go alone. Amelia couldn't utter a word. He's busy, after all. She asked if he was sure it was worth wasting his time on her. Why couldn't he send one of his subordinates? Why bother going there himself? "Well," he said, placing his hand on the crystal before leaving, he couldn't allow her to share a room with just anyone. "What?" Amelia asked in surprise. What did he say? Did she hear him correctly? She tried to find out. But the next moment they were transported to the Magic Tower. The Duke asked if it was indicated by the teleport. "No," she answered and screamed. "That means she and the Grand Duke will share a room while they are here." "Yes," he answered. "Of course, they will have different beds, and they will be in different rooms." In her past life, due to overwork, she died alone and never shared a room with a man. But she couldn't say that she was too embarrassed. The Duke had completely different thoughts in his head. She must have had a reason why she was so keen to take the parthenium to the tower. All this talk of business was just a smokescreen. Even her friendliness towards him is probably just to make him lower his guard. So don't give in. Be on your guard. Now that they are in the Magic Tower, she will soon reveal her true motives. The girl who planted spies even in the Imperial Palace, he needs to find out who she wanted to meet here. His lordship was informed through his magic ball that he had a guest requesting an audience. Thomas Donald, a representative of the diplomatic delegation of the Kingdom of Salt, both were surprised. And Amelia saw in the man from her own kingdom a threat disturbing her peaceful life. Why is the envoy of the Kingdom of Salt looking for him? Don't tell me. He thought that he learned that Princess Emily was here. So she really did come to the Magic Tower to meet with an influential ally from her country. If she plans to escape with his help, then... But turning around, he saw the girl running away. Seeing Amelia's anxiety, the man looked in on her and asked what she was doing there. Amelia screamed that she would be quieter than grass, lower than water, and asked the Duke to pretend that she was not there at all. Winchester could not understand the motives of the second Princess Salt. While he was thinking about one thing, she was doing something else. Thomas soon arrived at the Duke of Winchester's office, and it was an honor to finally meet him. The man had heard a lot about his reputation, and it was a great honor for their house. Thomas Donald, the one who called her a disgrace to the royal family for being illegitimate and despised her to the extreme. And he also made her work like a pony, on Lilia's orders. It's scary to remember. The Duke suggested keeping it brief, and Thomas agreed. The reason he had come here was, with the food shortage in the Kingdom of Salt, Amelia felt the reproach in his words, as she had feared. In fact, the reason why they were in such a hurry to the Magic Tower to find a way to solve it, but they were refused. In the original, it was at this moment that famine began in the Kingdom of Salt, and ordinary people began to die. She tried to avoid this, but If he could help ease even a little of Cleaton's ban on the wheat trade, the Salt royal family would pay for his help. But the Duke saw no reason why he should concern himself with matters that did not concern him. The problem of the Salt people's hunger must be solved by the Salt royal family. And the Duke was about to cruelly refuse the envoy when suddenly Amelia pulled him away. Concerned for the civilian population of her country, she begged the Duke to help them. Winchester looked at the girl kneeling in front of him in shock, while Thomas also fell to his knees, begging the Duke. Their Princess Lilia is so saddened by the hunger of her people that she cries every single day. He spoke about something else, begging for help, but Winchester coldly and sharply refused. He spoke of the special relationship between the princess and the prince of their empire, but he continued to chatter about things that had nothing to do with him. "That's enough," the man said to the messenger and asked him to leave, but then Amelia pulled his pants down. And crying reminded him that it was all his fault, which Winchester was indignant about. If he hadn't wanted to test her with this wheat scam, innocent people wouldn't be starving now. Amelia begged him and asked him if he couldn't help her. The Duke looked at her with an ambiguous expression on his face, making a decision. It was a problem. It was absurd to stay here after he had refused them, but if he tries to move by force now, his pants will fall down. If people in the border region can't stand it and start stealing, it will become a problem for them too. He will order the knights from his territory to deal with the wheat issue. Thomas thanked him enthusiastically, and Princess Lily would soon express her gratitude. And with his permission, the man said that he would go. The Duke at this time was still sorting out his pants. And when Amelia, having finally achieved her goal, let go of the Duke's trouser leg, he ordered her to leave. And to explain, Amelia trembled with fear in front of the gloomy Duke, calling for her mother. Because of him, the people of Salt are suffering. Does he not feel a drop of guilt? But she could not say so directly. In exchange for Salt's help, Amelia promised to help him, his lordship. She will make sure he survives, even if war breaks out with Crown Prince Raiden. "What did she say?" the man asked again, shuddering and clutching his shoulder with anxiety. When she was first kidnapped, she didn't know who he was, but after staying in the Grand Duchy, she realized it. This man is the half-brother who was a thorn in the side of the original's protagonist, Crown Prince Raiden. Raiden, a madman obsessed with power and Princess Lilia. In eliminating his rivals, he did not hesitate to frame the innocent and exile them, or even kill them. And Amelia was worried that this man would probably be next. The fact that Crown Prince Raiden wants to keep him under his thumb is information that is known only to the highest inner circle. Just think, she was able to understand their complex relationship. Her information network was so wide. "Princess?" he said as he approached closer. The more he learned about her, the more interest flared up in him. "What about?" she asked timidly, a chill running through her body. Winchester didn't understand a single thing she did. The more he learned about her, the more he became interested in her true identity. How had he not noticed such an important person until now? Just a few years ago, he thought he knew everything. Everything that is needed about the Kingdom of Salt. He arranged a meeting with the owner of the Magic Tower for tomorrow. Apparently there is a problem with the tower's core, so its owner can't leave the tower. They can talk right next to him. "Yes, she will be able to access directly the core of the Magic Tower, I understand," she replied. "Tomorrow we will go together." "Yes," the Duke replied with a sly grin. He was looking forward to tomorrow. The reason she came to the Magic Tower will soon be revealed, as will the reason she hid from Salt's messenger. And also, why did she take his side? Emily wondered what he was waiting for there with impatience. The next day, in the Magic Tower, the magician greeted His Grace, the Grand Duke of Winchester. He apologized for the fact that due to the tower's internal problems, he was forced to meet him in such a place. He said that he wanted to introduce someone, and she was a guest who was staying with him temporarily. She said that she would like to make a business proposal to the Magic Tower. The magician was surprised. He appreciated all of this, but right now all the mages in the Magic Tower were busy, which is why she wanted to show him something, Amelia explained. The princess asked his lordship if she could borrow it for a while. The Duke handed over a weapon made of partanium to the tower's chief mage. She was sure that this item would be useful to the Magic Tower. Well, partanium was certainly a rare ore, but he wasn't sure how it could help the Magic Tower. And Amelia enthusiastically grabbed the hammer and said that she would show him. This is the same method that Lily originally suggested using, but the tower's owner refused to listen. Emilia swung her hammer and stood in front of the core of the magic tower and struck. The magicians present and the owner of the tower jumped in fear, and the Duke was taken aback, not expecting such an outcome. The solution to the problem of the magic tower and the novel was to completely destroy the magic core. "The core is broken," the magicians exclaimed. "They put so much magical power into restoring it." "What is this?" they shouted. "The destruction of the magic core will affect the entire magic tower." The tower began to shake, and then the owner of the tower screamed, "The magic tower is collapsing." But a moment later, the trembling throughout the tower stopped, and the magicians froze in shock, turning around. The man asked in shock what had happened to the core, directing everyone's attention to it. And of course, next to the absolutely intact core stood the culprit of all the celebration and anxiety of the magicians. Upon examination, it became clear that the core had been restored, and the flow of magical power had also stabilized. Emilia explained that the core of the magic tower was in the process of molting, which they confused with destruction. And they tried to support him by pouring in magical power, which led to a disruption in the flow of magical power. Using the Partanium hammer to complete the core molt, the magic tower should now have no problem. So the solution to the problem was that simple. He asked how she knew about it, and Emilia couldn't say that she read about it in a novel. And awkwardly referring to the core itself, she answered, "The core's voice told her this." Hearing about the voice of the core, the men were inspired, which meant that she was the one who hears the voice of magic and is born once every 1,000 years. He thanked the young lady by granting her the title of Listener of the Magic Tower and prepared documents to send to the Cretan Empire. A person who has received this title can receive help from the Magic Tower 3 times in a lifetime for free, an advantage. But to do this, the head of the tower needed to officially obtain her name and status, but she also could not call herself the kidnapped Princess Solt. And so she said that in fact it was all part of His Grace the Duke of Winchester's plan. Therefore, the title should be given to him, Emilia suggested, but under the influence of emotions, the head did not pay attention to the inconsistencies in her words. He thanked him. They will consider him as the hearer of the magic tower, so when they need help, he asked to contact them at any time. The Duke did not want to take responsibility for the princess's actions, but still, he didn't say anything against the gratitude of the head of the magic tower. After this, Emilia offered the Duke to divide the reward, and having given an argument, she said to divide it 2 for 1 in her favor. "So that's why she took the weapon from the Partanium?" Winchester asked. "Well, yes," the girl answered. "How did she then know that it would help stabilize the core of the magic tower?" "Well," Emilia drawled, starting her song again, "this is the voice of the core, but the Duke ordered not to lie." She was scared by his tone, and then she said that she accidentally came across this information in Salt when she was working with documents. In any case, the problem of the magic tower is solved, and thanks to this, they can mass-produce comics using the printing system. And if this business is successful, it will benefit him as an investor, her and the artists. In fact, he was very interested, he said as he approached the princess, even though she was the one who had been kidnapped and held prisoner in the duchy. She had achieved a lot, so what did she do when she was in Salt? Why doesn't she try to come back? "Because she doesn't want to," she answered, retreating. "She didn't want to be used like a slave." She also said that she was a slave of Princess Lily, hellish working conditions, no care for the workers, stupid bosses, and then there are bastards like Thomas, who are always wagging their tails at their superiors and thinking about how to profit from her. Compared to that time, she was happy now. And to protect that life, no, to improve her life as a homebody, she will do everything possible. That's why she begged him not to drive her away. She even shared with him the privilege of the title of the Magic Tower and would share the profits from the comics. Even after hearing all this confession, Winchester found it hard to accept her words as the truth. Whether she is sincere or not, the title of hearing the Magic Tower is certainly a huge privilege. If need be, he will one day be able to enlist the support of the Magic Tower, which means even the imperial family will not dare to act. Incredibly great informational assistance, rational style of work and personnel management. It's true that she is a talent that he wanted to keep close while she is clearly on his side. Funny, he really wanted to believe this girl. He suggested that Emilia meet again with the owner of the Magic Tower and discuss the details for their comic book business. As a result, the comic book business became a huge hit and quickly sold out. The artists received a lot of fan mail. It was the first time in their lives that they had received so much attention. For the sake of illustration for the second volume, one of the guys promised to grind his bones into dust. They received requests for the plot of the third volume. Ashley suggested starting with the second volume, and the head of the tower also did not stand aside, wanting to help. Everything was going too well, and it was even more exhausting. The sunlight was too strong. Lolita asked the lady if she hadn't slept enough again today. The Duke gave her a new room. Lily thought that it was much better here, more spacious and brighter. The room was really good, but the problem was that she, who could barely fall asleep at dawn, woke up every morning to the terrible sunlight. It was a pity that the curtains couldn't have been at least a little thicker, not as much as the ones she used in her past life, but still. Wait, thick curtains, that's right. Emilia had a new idea. By that time, news had reached the prince that the Grand Duke of Winchester had received the title of Listener of the Magic Tower. Yes, the advisor replied. It seemed he had given important advice that helped solve the problem related to the core of the Magic Tower. He failed to kidnap Princess Lily and performs poorly in every task he assigns him. And now he's also intervened in the affairs of the Magic Tower. It looks like he needs to be taught a lesson. Emilia came to the Duke again, overwhelmed with work, and he asked, "So it means she wants to buy the pallet skin?" "Yes," the princess answered enthusiastically. And it wasn't difficult, but Winchester was interested in what she had in mind this time. She had heard that the pallet population had grown dramatically in the past few years, and that the Grand Duke personally led the destruction team. In fact, she just remembered something from the original. "I also heard that the Grand Duke's territory had a problem with where to store the huge amount of leather. That's why she wanted to try to make something new out of it." "Okay, go ahead." The Duke gave her permission. Emilia could not believe his generosity. The estate is overflowing with pallet leather. If it's useful, then how can they get rid of it? 2 birds with 1 stone. The princess happily thanked him and said that she would go, but Winchester asked her to wait. He asked what exactly she wanted to create. Pausing for a moment, Emilia looked back at the man and cheerfully announced that it was a secret for now. Having achieved her goals for the day, Emilia said how long it had been since she had been in bed. She thought maybe he should just tell him everything. Winchester said he would tell Oscar about it, and she felt a little awkward seeing his disappointed face. "But no," she immediately snapped, "ruining a gift for the one it was intended for is wrong." Lately, everyone at the Grand Duke's estate had been suffering from lack of sleep. Since the Crown Prince had him under control, the Duke had to lead the magical beast taming squad. As soon as he returned, there was work to catch up on, so she came up with an idea, an item that would give everyone a sweet and deep sleep. Judging by the amount of paperwork that has accumulated, it looks like the Grand Duke won't be able to sleep tonight. But perhaps because he was tired, he seemed a little sexier than usual. No, she drove away dirty thoughts. You can't think about work in a sacred bed. She makes blackout curtains for herself, just like that. Of course, also for Lolita, for Oscar, and will give some to the Grand Duke, since that is what she does. But the next day, Emilia was in shock and asked Oscar what it was. "A warehouse," answered the Duke's assistant, and the princess understood him, came closer and opened the door. She asked what this horrible amount of junk was. There was so much stuff there that you couldn't even close the door. His lordship, for her sake, the princess, ordered all the pallets located on his territory to be collected and delivered here. It may be a caring gesture for men, but this little bastard is a Grand Duke. It was as if he was offering her to watch how she would suffer here, although in their past life they had had enmity. There really was an incredible amount of skins inside, just as Emilia thought. There were many more of them here, but if he collected so many skins, how many pacification operations did he endure? In that case, didn't the Grand Duke do all the work of the Empire with his own hands? Suddenly, she smelled an aroma and grimaced, asking what that disgusting smell was. "It's the smell of pallet skins," Oscar explained. The skins stored here had not yet been cleaned, and there was a strong smell of decay. Emilia asked why he was standing there then. Oscar proudly replied that he had a weak stomach. Emilia asked Lolita if she knew how to turn this skin into tan. "Of course," she answered enthusiastically. She was well acquainted with the skin processing specialist. Her name was Mrs. Rainey. She was the mother of the seamstress, and she had no equal in the Winchester area. Her fingers are so thin and graceful that watching her work is like enjoying playing the harp. The princess asked if she could meet with Mrs. Rainey right now, of course, Lolita replied. So they found themselves in the reception room of the Grand Duke's estate, and the girl asked if she wanted to see her. The masculine woman asked Emilia what she could do for her. Lolita, crying from fear, thought the princess, why didn't she tell her that she was so unstoppable? Emilia asked herself not to be nervous, said nothing special. She would like to trust Lady Rainey with the work of the palette skins, the princess forced out. The woman appreciated the lady's offer, but was forced to refuse. Why? Emilia asked. Do they pay too little for working with leather palettes? She answered, considering the labor intensity. Especially in such hot weather, when demand for it has dropped, it is unlikely that anyone will want it. At times like these, working with palette leather comes with enormous risks. She apologized for not living up to her expectations, but no, everything is fine, Emilia answered. But in reality, everything was not okay at all, not a bit. She would be left without a blackout curtain. The cozy morning when she wakes up without the scorching rays of the sun, she could not give up so easily. She provoked the brain to think that another way out had to be found. But then the seamstress apologetically asked what exactly she wanted to create from the palette fabric. Curtains, the princess replied, which puzzled Rainey. She said that this fabric does not allow sunlight to pass through and is only suitable for carpets. There it was. Emilia found a way to convince her. She wanted to create blackout curtains that would block out all the sunlight. It was a secret, but in fact it was for the Grand Duke's estate. She confidently explained the essence. Lately, everyone has been so busy that they have barely been able to get any sleep at night, she said emotionally. That's why she wanted to help them rest comfortably even during the day. And, come to think of it, everyone in this estate looks exhausted, but still. The story was touching, but she is a businesswoman, she needs to be practical, and she asked for forgiveness. Lady Rainey, Emilia said to her, you have said an excellent thing. She asked what about the offer that she would pay her more than the cost of the most expensive fabric, and if she works overtime, then she will double the pay. If she still refuses, then unfortunately she will have to find someone else. After the deal was completed, Lolita exclaimed to the lady that it was impressive and asked how she had managed to make such a bold offer. And if you work overtime, he will double the pay, Lolita quoted. In all her years of work in the empire, she had never heard such a proposal. True, Emilia asked modestly, in the place where she lived, something like this was the norm. But then, after hesitating, Lolita asked the lady if she could really allow this. The offer was tempting, and Reina had no reason to refuse the generous job. But to process the leather, she needs several additional professional workers. And tanners too, of course, the princess replied. Just hire as many as you need. That's what she said, reminding Miss Emily of Lolita. But now she is a prisoner, and also broke, since she is the one planning to cover all the expenses. She just asked me not to say that she made such a proposal without a backup plan. But Emilia asked Lolita not to worry. She had already thought of everything. The princess knocked on Oscar's office door, and when he allowed her in, she greeted him. Just look at these piles of papers. Everything here was even worse than in the Grand Duke's office. Oscar had to report to his lordship soon, so he couldn't stop working. And he asked her to forgive him for talking while he was working, of course. She answered awkwardly. He was very busy after all. Not at all, just reviews comic book distribution contracts and processes interview requests. He files tax reports and documents the completion of construction, and he also spent the entire night collecting palette skins. He's not busy at all, Oscar said, laughing hysterically. Well, in short, the translation of his words is this: say what you need to say and get lost. Emilia agreed to cooperate and, being brief, ordered that her money be given to her. What money? He asked irritably. Money, she explained sweetly, that she had honestly earned from the profits of the comics. Oh, so she meant royalties. Exactly, she exclaimed and asked if she could have them right now, of course. Oscar answered, they are princesses. But, unable to resist asking, the man asked if he could find out why she needed them. Princess Emilia couldn't tell now, but it was very urgent, and the tired man had already resigned himself to it. He gave her the seal of the Grand Duke and the key. She should take them to the Pascal Trade Guild. They will help her. She should go alone. The girl was taken aback. Yes, he confirmed, as she saw he couldn't go anywhere now, unless she wants to wait until he's finished with work for them to go together. Emilia just laughed nervously at his joke, sharing the pain as a former employee. My lady, Lolita exclaimed. It was their first time out together. How exciting. Yeah, Emilia answered happily, their first time out. It was so horrible, the princess was already missing her bed and blanket. Lolita asked her lady to look where, asked Amelia, did she find the Pascal Trading Guild? Pulling the princess along, Lolita told the lady that this necklace would suit her perfectly. And yet, Amelia thought with a smile, perhaps going out somewhere every now and then wasn't so bad. While the girls were chatting pleasantly and choosing jewelry, a man from the alley had already set his sights on them. From Oscar's report, Winchester learned that the princess had asked for her share of the fee. He didn't understand why she suddenly needed money and asked his assistant that he hadn't heard what she needed it for. "True," answered Oscar. "She only said that it was very urgent." Urgently then, the Duke repeated anxiously and asked where the princess was now. At this time, Amelia was surprised by the queue to get into the trade guild. Well, Pascal deals with more than just finance. The princess sighed, thinking that they would not be able to return to the estate until the evening. Lolita asked the lady in surprise what she was doing, and she asked what she was talking about getting in line. The maid, laughing at her mistress's ignorance, said that it was not their turn here. So she dragged her to the man, who looked at them with a stern, piercing gaze. He asked if they could see the line of people behind him. If they wanted to get in, go to the end of the line. Then the girl said that she would like to get something from her cell and handed over the Duke's seal. Upon seeing the family heirloom, the man was initially taken aback, but then quickly softened. He asked the girls to forgive him and said that he would take them inside, asking them to follow him. Amelia was surprised at how differently visitors and VIP clients were treated. They went down very deep, and the princess wondered how far they would go. We went down to the door guarded by men and went even further. And only after passing through another hall did the man inform the girls that they had arrived. The princess told Lolita to open it, and the girl walked forward to a huge safe. Entering it, Amelia thought that she expected the fee to be a significant amount, but looking at the mountains of gold and not imagining that there would be so much, she called Lolita. And inspired by what she had earned, she suggested that she hurry up and know the money. It was already getting dark when they left the guild. Amelia was worried that it was heavy for her and offered to carry it together. But Lolita proudly announced that before leaving, she had already cast a weight-reducing spell on the bag. And besides, when else will she be able to hold so much money? If you think about it, maybe the Grand Duke isn't so bad after all. He's not like Princess Lily, who didn't pay her and even made her work like an immortal pony. He allowed her to read comics and sleep, gave her food and allowed her to earn money. She is grateful to him for a lot. And he's also a handsome guy. Damn, what did she just blurt out? She's completely lost her mind. How could she even think that about her kidnapper? But still, she won't deny that she is truly grateful and has thought about buying him a gift. "Thief!" Lolita suddenly screamed loudly, and the man rushed at Amelia. Lolita rushed to help the lady, but someone's black cloak rushed past her faster. Amelia begged him not to let her hit her head. She didn't want to die again. She realized that it didn't hurt at all and opened her eyes, seeing remarkable features. For a moment, she thought she saw his lordship Winchester before her. And not believing her eyes, she exclaimed in amazement, "Your Grace, Grand Duke." But having looked more closely, I realized that I was mistaken and screamed in fear, "You're not him." She sheepishly apologized for mistaking him for someone else, thinking that such a busy man could not possibly be here. At that moment, Lolita ran up and asked the lady with concern if she was okay. She was very sorry. She should have been much more careful. Everything is fine, Amelia reassured her. She didn't expect this either. In her past life, there were no pickpockets thanks to cameras, so she was carefree as a fool. Turning around, the princess wanted to thank the man for his help, but he disappeared. She asked in surprise where he had gone, and Lolita explained that he had just suddenly run away somewhere. It's a pity. She didn't even have time to ask his name. The Lolita asked the lady what they should do if they couldn't get the money back. Amelia tried to calm Lolita down, asking her not to cry, but she understood perfectly well that without money, making thick curtains was out of the question. Suddenly, a guy they had recently met called out to the girls and asked if they were theirs. "How are you?" asked Amelia. The guy explained that the kidnapper did not have time to get far. The security has probably already found him and taken him with them. "It was their bag," Lolita exclaimed with relief, calling her lady. The princess sincerely thanked him for this, and for what happened earlier, she didn't even know how to repay him. "Everything is fine," he replied. "It is quite natural to help those who are in trouble," but then Amelia asked him to wait. "Maybe he is," the girl began. "It's impossible." the guy thought, clenching his teeth. Did she really recognize him? But the girl enthusiastically asked if maybe he wanted to become her personal knight. The Grand Duke was shocked and taken aback by the young lady's proposal. He nervously asked himself, smiling, why she even thought of this, but she judged by his clothes. To her, he is a mercenary who came to the Grand Duchy in search of work, but the Duke only took the first thing he found from a pile of junk. She couldn't explain in more detail, but, she admitted in a whisper, she could say she was a distant relative of the Duke of Winchester. If he becomes her personal knight, the payment will be very generous. Ah, yes, the Duke, embarrassed by the close contact with the princess, said without thinking. Oscar asked if everything was okay. Winchester replied that a lot had happened. Oscar reported that after returning, Amelia visited his office. She said that she wanted to hire a guard knight and asked what she should do, so what should they do? His lordship, realizing that he was in trouble, sighed heavily, and Oscar asked what was the matter. The knight she wants to hire is him, the Duke admitted, and the assistant could not contain his emotions. He shared his feelings about having a bad feeling, but even if he had a ring to change his appearance, he should have been more careful. But the princess was robbed, he had no choice. By the way, the power of the ring was impressive, considering that she did not recognize his lordship and tried to hire him as a knight. This is a family ring passed down in the Blade Duchy to protect against enemies. He told the princess that they would run a background check on the knight and asked if they should just refuse. But the Duke, on the contrary, asked for approval. Then he asked if he really wanted to become the princess's personal knight. In fact, Winchester admitted, it was even better if he could keep an eye on the princess from a close distance. This will make it easier to unravel her plans, and remembering, he added, strengthen the security of the Grand Duchy. Pickpockets operate in broad daylight and public safety is appalling. He seems to be very worried about the fact that the princess was robbed by a pickpocket. The Duke was simply concerned about the safety of the citizens. That's all? Yes, of course, answered Oscar. The assistant could go, he needed to think and put his thoughts in order, and Oscar left. Left alone, the Duke went outside to breathe some fresh night air. Suddenly a question rang out about what he was doing here all alone, and turning around, the Duke saw her. Much more important, the man noted, is what the princess is doing here. Isn't she one of those people who doesn't even want to show her nose out of her room? Now she understands what kind of image she has. Amelia replied that she was just on her way to his lordship's office to see him. But she saw him here, standing very gloomy and all alone, so she decided to disturb him. She had some business with him, the Duke asked. The princess wanted to thank him. Oscar told her everything. She heard that his lordship had supplied food and necessities to the citizens of Salt at the border. He simply kept his promise, but still, she didn't know he would go that far. And, coquettishly thanking him, she asked if he could give her his hand and close his eyes. He didn't understand why she was constantly asking for his hand and generally forcing him to do such things. A few moments later, Amelia asked the Duke to open his eyes and he saw a box in his hand. Before she could say that she hoped he would like it, Winchester immediately said that it was a bribe. What? Amelia drawled discontentedly. A bribe? Winchester asked if it wasn't a bribe so that he would approve of her hiring a knight. He is a very honest man, she vouched for him, but he thought she trusted him so much because he caught a pickpocket. After the Duke's words, Amelia was taken aback and he continued, they don't even know each other. If you think about it, the princess trusts people too easily. She is usually smart, but at times like these, she seems incredibly careless. But then she asked his lordship how he knew that she had been robbed. Coughing in surprise, he answered, he heard from Oscar. In any case, the princess, since she is rather careless, he thought she would still need a knight. He agreed so she could go. He wanted to mope here alone for a little while longer. He kicked her out of his office, and Amelia thought that she hadn't told Oscar about the thief, what was going on here. But she decided that he heard it from Lolita and, letting it go, ran off to her place. After checking that the girl had left, he took out her gift and said that she did have a keen eye for people. But a week later, tired, the Duke angrily asked who had allowed her to enter his room without permission. The maid felt sorry, but without listening to the explanations, the Duke ordered Princess Amelia to be brought to him. Immediately, he threatened. Minutes earlier, the head maid had called the master to the prepared dinner. Winchester apologized, but he had no lunch today. He hadn't slept for several days already. And feeling tired, depriving himself of lunch, the Duke headed to the restroom, but suddenly froze. Due to fatigue, he became even more angry and asked who allowed her to enter his room without permission. The maid apologized because his lordship had not been sleeping well lately. Lady Amelia said it was a gift. Maybe she could help him, and she thought so too. It was her fault that she acted on her own. Enraged by her willfulness, Winchester ordered the maid to bring Lady Amelia to her immediately. "Oh my God!" Lolita exclaimed when she arrived at the barn to see the curtains. They really did create the night. "The curtains, made of leather, do a really good job of blocking out the light," Reina said. "Each one has its own pattern, so there are no duplicates. And that's great too." "That's right. Amelia really liked it. It's all thanks to the lady." Reina asked the lady not to be modest. She was just following instructions. All of this was made under the guidance of her mistress. And then the businesswoman asked if she could give away the sample that they took last time. "Yes," Amelia answered. "Thanks to her, she was able to give it to someone who needed it." Come to think of it, the Grand Duke hasn't said anything yet, so is he still busy with work? By the way, Reina wanted to make a proposal about starting a business together selling them. "Business?" Amelia asked in horror, having just retired. She thought it would be nice if more people could use them, not just the estate residents. Even the workshop that washed the leather and all the craftsmen who made the samples wanted to buy them. There was definitely a demand for them, but in reality, Amelia didn't want to take on any more work. But as soon as Reina said that the profit from selling curtains would not lead to a comfortable life, Amelia immediately agreed to cooperate. So, if you think about it, there's quite a lot of leather left. It would be a huge waste not to use it. If she can earn some money for food and rest at home, what harm will it do if she takes it on now? She's had a job before. She'll just think of it as doing 50 years' worth of work at once. But then the head maid came running after Lady Amelia, out of breath, and looking at the woman with caution, I wondered why she had come running in such a hurry. It was just an invitation to dinner, and Amelia asked with displeasure if she really had to change clothes for this. In the Empire, wearing formal attire is a rule of etiquette when receiving invitations to share a meal. It's a rather tiresome rule of etiquette, but why would he suddenly invite her to dinner? Perhaps his lordship was deeply touched by the blackout curtains she gave him. But still, the princess had some kind of bad feeling. Arriving at dinner, Amelia thanked his lordship for the invitation. He asked her to sit down, and the girl sat on the opposite side, where everything was too luxurious. She was worried why his mood today was completely different from his usual one. This made her nervous, but then the Duke asked if she liked the food, and the girl shuddered. "Yes, very tasty," the princess answered without showing it, and asked if she could find out why he had called her. The man winced and asked if that was enough to repay the gift. From his words alone, it seemed that Lolita was right. He liked the gift, and she was glad that he liked it. He hated it when anyone entered his room. From that moment on, he ordered not to touch his things without permission. That's why he called her today. Could it be, asked Amelia, that he didn't like her gift? Could he tell her what exactly he didn't like? "That's it," the man said sharply, looking from under his forehead. This was extremely unpleasant, and he hoped that in the future she would not do anything like that. The trembling girl asked for forgiveness for entering the room without permission. But still, considering that it was a sincere gift, wasn't his reaction a bit too much? Considering this sincerity, even though he didn't like the gift, he repaid her in a similar way. Besides, should he be grateful for a gift from someone who barely knows him? Since he thought she understood his point, the Duke took his leave. But Amelia could not leave Winchester's insult unattended, and running after him, asked him to wait. She kept insisting that he should tell her exactly what he didn't like so that she would be more careful next time. He grabbed her hand and replied angrily. He had never been able to get a good night's sleep, especially in pitch darkness, because when he slept, his mother always beat him. No matter how hard she tried, it wasn't enough, his mother yelled at him. He must become the crown prince. He must punish those who humiliated his mother. And coldly, with pain in his soul, he asked if this was enough to answer her question. If she understood everything, then stay in your room as usual and read your favorite comics. Don't hang around sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. And so, having snapped at Amelia, telling her about his tragic childhood, he left, leaving her devastated and in tears. Probably because he hadn't slept for several days, he was too emotional. Regretting what he had done, he sighed, letting the situation slide and thinking that he shouldn't have taken it out on the princess. There was a knock in the room and Oscar entered and said it was him. Winchester said he wanted to be alone. But the thing was that the time had soon come to become the princess's night. He asked to give his ring here, no matter how absent-minded he was, but to forget that from this week he became the princess's knight. After such words, he didn't even know how he would be able to look her in the eyes. Lying in bed, Amelia thought that this was the first time she had seen such an expression on the Duke's face. It was so infuriating, how she wanted to pour out her soul to someone. But everything in the estate belongs to the Duke, so sooner or later it will definitely reach him. But she jumped out of bed, remembering that there was definitely one person. "Yan, are you here yet?" the princess asked the arriving Winchester in the guise of a knight. She needed to ask him about something, after all. They had a relationship as an employee and an employer, he awkwardly confirmed. "So, he is the only person here who is hers, right?" "Yes," Jan said uncertainly. "Of course." And he assumed, based on her leading questions, that perhaps the lady needed something from him. In fact, she admitted, today she accidentally made a mistake with one person and he got very angry, and she would like to make amends, but she didn't know how. Jan apologized, saying that he didn't understand. Amelia suspected that this is how it would be, and therefore confessed the truth of what was happening in more detail. She wanted to cure his lordship's insomnia and ask for forgiveness. He said that he could not sleep in pitch darkness. She asked how to make the room have some light, but without the sun rays. Maybe he knew what could help. Embarrassed by the close contact with the princess, the man replied that right now he too could not come up with a solution. Without stars and the moon in the night sky, it will be difficult, really. Stars and the moon, the princess thought. That's right. The man just nudged her brain toward a wonderful solution to the problem. She thanked Jan, exclaiming that thanks to him she had come up with a brilliant idea. Perhaps, she asked Jan, he would agree to work overtime today. She will count this as special work and pay triple the amount. Consent was obtained. Once out in the forest, Jan walked ahead, clearing the way for the princess while she walked behind. Having figured it out, he called to go further, and Amelia, thanking him, said that it should be somewhere here. She said that she had found something that would help cope with the Duke's insomnia, but why did they suddenly go to the mountains? "What will help him is in these mountains," Amelia explained. Jan was surprised and asked, "In the mountains?" The princess asked Jan if he had ever heard of fireflies, and yes, he had, the man replied. They live deep in forests near water, and their tails contain a glowing liquid. Everything was exactly like that, and the man asked, "But what exactly did she want to do with them?" At night, this liquid glows brightly, and she wanted to use it to draw stars on the blackout curtains. The starry sky shining in the darkness. His words about the stars and the moon inspired her. But they are very rare and hard to find, but she heard that some artists use the glowing liquid as paint. She once saw this when she bought paintings from Lily's wife. Sometimes even she can be useful. Even with thick curtains blocking out the light, the glowing stars will prevent the room from being plunged into pitch darkness. This would undoubtedly help his lordship get rid of his insomnia, and Ian was sure the Duke would be incredibly grateful. Much more than 2 hours had passed, and Ian suggested to the lady to finish for today and return. Amelia wanted to search a little longer, and told Jan that he could return first. Fireflies live deep in caves. They say that only a couple of people have managed to see them, and even they have already done a lot. He suggested coming back tomorrow and looking some more, but Amelia's map said they should be around here somewhere. But suddenly the princess, getting up, tripped over her own foot, and the Duke immediately rushed after the lady. So the two of them fell off the cliff, but fortunately, they survived. Getting up, Winchester worriedly asked if she was okay, and if she was injured anywhere. "You see," he said, "that's why he said it was dangerous and they should go back." But Amelia was no longer listening to John as if enchanted. She was looking somewhere into the distance. The man called out to the lady in surprise, and the girl said happily, "Finally, finally they found them, the fireflies," and when he got up he saw that they were surrounded by glowing creatures all over the field. And the next morning, Amelia met with his lordship again, and he asked what it was. Blackout curtains with glow-in-the-dark stars. She prepared them as an apology gift for yesterday. Therefore, even with the curtains drawn, the stars will emit light all night, so the room will not be pitch dark. Just think, she finished in just half a day. It looks like she started painting them right after returning from the forest. It was so insightful and thoughtful of her that Winchester couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Not seeing a reaction, Amelia said that if he didn't like it, she would take them away, but the Duke replied that he would try, since the princess had tried so hard. She asked enthusiastically, and as they parted, the girl said that she hoped he would like the gift. And with relief she left the man's room. Suddenly the Grand Duke called out to Her Highness the Princess, and she stopped. Winchester wanted to repay her kindness, but he couldn't find the right words. Amelia was already feeling embarrassed by her growing awkwardness, when suddenly the Duke, albeit awkwardly, asked if she liked the meat. Yes, she answered happily. To be honest, she simply adored meat. No seafood could compare to it. True, Winchester asked and said, then he will ask to prepare more meat for today's dinner. This meant that she was a welcome guest at the meal. The Duke said, see you at dinner. Yes, she answered happily. Lying in bed and looking at the starry sky reflected on the curtains, the Duke remembered that evening. Having collected the fireflies, she sighed. Making gifts is surprisingly difficult, and don't say that, agreed Jan. Then the princess thanked the knight with all her heart, for today she would never have been able to find them on her own. The man replied that he had done nothing special and asked if he could ask a question. Sure, ask anything, she replied, and Jan asked why she was doing all this. He didn't know exactly what happened, but wasn't she angry at the man who didn't appreciate her gift at all? He didn't understand why she had gone so far for this, but Amelia herself hadn't really thought about it. At first, she simply felt sorry for him because he reminded her of what she used to be like. But then she realized that he had helped her a lot, so maybe she just wanted to repay him for it. Despite his outward indifference and rudeness, he never refused her request. Deep down, he was kinder than everyone else. Besides, she used to ask for tomorrow not to come, but now she couldn't wait for it to come. So when she returned to her old place, she thought she would miss this place terribly. Why do these words evoke such strange emotions in him, these stars glowing in the dark? When he looked at them, his heart became so calm, as if he were looking at the princess herself. Perhaps because of what happened yesterday, returning to this place made Amelia nervous. But then the door to the dining room opened, and Winchester entered and asked how long she had been waiting. No, she just arrived, Amelia answered, coming closer. His lordship seemed to be even more embarrassed and called out to Her Highness, and he awkwardly noticed that it seemed her face was too close. Amelia began to fuss. The fact was that his lordship had a good complexion today, and she wondered if he had slept well. The man said her blackout curtains were something else. He hadn't slept so soundly at night in a long time, Winchester admitted, never waking up once. Amelia was very glad to hear this, and then noticed that he was wearing the brooch that she had given him. But wasn't it she who told him to wear it? And yet, the girl replied, it suited him very well. The Duke was hungry, and inviting the princess to the table, he said, let's eat before the food gets cold. The girl agreed. As he did so, he noticed that she seemed to enjoy the food. It was truly incredibly delicious. It's probably because she's calmer now, and it's much easier to eat today than yesterday. After a pause, Winchester sighed and said that he had not had time to finish earlier. He would have liked to apologize to her for yesterday, but suddenly Oscar interrupted them, calling his lordship. He asked his assistant about his behavior, but he immediately asked him to ask. An urgent message had just arrived. He knew it was impolite, but he had to enter without permission. The Duke asked what was the matter. Oscar reported that the message came from the Imperial Palace, and it contained a warning that Crown Prince Raiden would soon be here. The elder brother decided to pay an uninvited visit to his illegitimate brother. If this happened, then there must definitely be an ulterior motive behind Raiden's actions. He asked if they had said anything else, but the answer was no. According to the message, he would arrive here in 2 hours. We need to prepare quickly. He was sorry, he told Her Highness, and asked if they could reschedule their dinner for another time. Yes, the princess answered. She was not at all against it and asked not to worry about her. The Duke told Oscar that Raiden was not to meet Princess Amelia under any circumstances. Lolita, having met the lady, asked her if his lordship liked the gift. Yes, and thanks to him he slept well. Lolita knew it, because she had worked hard to prepare him. She asked if the lady had heard that Crown Prince Raiden was heading to the estate right now. She had heard Oscar report this right during dinner, so what kind of urgent matter was it that he showed up unannounced? Who knows, Amelia answered, and thought that she only hoped that it was not a serious matter. Suddenly, Lolita noticed that her lady looked pale and asked if she was unwell. True, she asked in surprise, and since they were talking about it, it seemed that she really did have a temperature. She thought it was all because of yesterday's overwork. She would bring medicine for the fever, so she asked the lady to rest. Her chest was tightening. Perhaps she should go out into the fresh air for a while. But suddenly the princess suspected that this might be because she was eating too quickly. Lolita was carrying some medicine to her mistress, when suddenly she was stopped by another maid who was just looking for her. And she conveyed that Mr. Oscar had asked to call her. "Why this?" asked Lolita. Who knows, she could have asked him personally. Lolita thought that there was nothing serious, but in reality everything turned out to be not so rosy. She was worried when she learned that she had to prevent the lady from leaving the chambers until the crown prince returned to the palace, although given her behavior, it shouldn't be difficult. Oscar couldn't give details, but their goal was to make sure she didn't run into the crown prince. The next important rule was that no one in the estate was to speak her name out loud. If even one of the orders was violated, he could not guarantee the safety of her life, Lolita said timidly. She understood. The crown prince finally arrived, and the inhabitants of the duchy greeted His Highness. "Long time no see, Kane," said the prince, and he asked his brother if he wasn't interested in why he personally came here. Ever since what happened in the magic tower, it seems he has devoted himself entirely to useless troubles. That's why he decided to visit him personally, and it was late, so he would stay overnight, he warned. And treating everyone in this ducal house with disdain, he ordered that the way be shown. "Yes," Winchester said coldly through his teeth to His Highness. Lolita returned from her meeting with Oscar and told the lady that she had brought her some medicine. She had already apologized for the delay, but instantly turned cold when her gaze swept across the empty room. Although modest, these were his temporary quarters. If he had informed them earlier, they would have been able to prepare suitable quarters. "That's enough for one night," said the prince, "and next time he will do the same." Well, then Winchester asked him to tell him why he was here. Well, since he was so interested, the prince would tell. As he knew, the comic book safety rules for the Damned Duke's mansion was incredibly popular among high society ladies at the moment. Lately, even his mother had become obsessed with him to the point of insanity and had gathered storytellers to read him to her. When it comes to obsession, whether mother or son, the queen insisted on meeting the author of this comic in person. And as her son, he couldn't ignore this desire, but no matter how hard he pressed, everyone kept their mouths shut. So he had to get his hands a little dirty before they admitted that this mansion was the source of funds. His mansion merely provided financial support for the project, and the prince was aware of this. This is obvious. Because creativity is not his strong point, they say that no one knows the identity of the author. Except for the Grand Duke of Winchester, that's right, he came to meet the author of this comic. His recent activities have been quite suspicious, from the Magic Tower to the comic book production. All these actions were completely out of his style, but for some reason, it seemed to him that meeting this man would give him answers to his questions. The Duke asked how he could be so sure of this, and the prince proudly replied that it was just a guess. But looking at his face now, he became more and more convinced of this. It was already late. He asked where he was going. The crown prince was just stuffy, so he wanted to take a walk. He didn't want to disturb anyone, so he ordered the knight to stay here and wait. When the prince left, the Duke asked about the princess. Oscar replied that she should be in her room. He gave Lolita clear instructions, so there was nothing to worry about. But then Lolita ran to Mr. Oscar in a hurry, and he asked the girl what she was doing there. The maid immediately fell on her knees before his lordship and said that she had committed a grave sin, and she told the Duke the terrible news that the lady had left. The temperature rose higher than before, and Amelia decided to return to the room and rest. But then the crown prince came out onto the terrace balcony and was surprised to notice the girl. He asked who was there and ordered Amelia to state her name and status. The princess had never seen him at the estate before and began to judge him by his clothes. From the way he spoke, she realized that Crown Prince Ryden was standing in front of her. Bowing, Amelia began to greet His Highness the Crown Prince. But before she could finish speaking, her body was hit by heat. Her legs gave way, and the girl fell unconscious. Meanwhile, the maids began searching for the lady, carefully searching every corner. Kane was freaking out about how one could lose one person in such a small estate. Oscar apologized and asked if it was possible that the princess had already left the estate, but if she had gone out, the knights would have swept her away, the Duke replied. But no one saw anything, which meant the princess was still inside. They had to find her before Ryden did. Oscar searched the office, but that girl was not there either, so the Duke sent him to check the terrace. Suddenly, the prince's voice from behind them asked what they were so desperately looking for at such a late hour. "Are you still awake, Your Highness?" the Duke asked him. Suddenly Ryden asked if it was possible that they were looking for a woman. If that was the case, he could help, he said, almost innocently and good-naturedly. But upon hearing this, Winchester seemed to break loose and angrily asked where she was. The prince groaned and asked the Duke to calm down, looking as if he would hit him at any second. But he did not ask his opinion on this matter and repeated again that he asked where she was. This situation and the Duke's reaction greatly amused the prince, and unable to contain his emotions, he burst out laughing. How long had it been since he saw that bestial expression on his face, he said, as if encouraging. And then he immediately informed his brother that the woman was in his room. Throwing off the prince's hand, the Duke said that if he touched her with even a finger, he would not remain on the sidelines. Oh my God, by openly showing his feelings like this, he only aroused his interest more. Jumping up from his place, Winchester ran into the guest room where the prince was staying. In his bed, indeed, lay Amelia, suffering from a fever. He said she was fine, and in his room, the crown prince shrugged. What did he do to her? Kane screamed, breaking down. But then a scolding voice asked Caney how he dared raise his voice at him, the crown prince. He glared at the Duke and said that he no longer seemed to care who he was standing in front of. Oscar and Lolita then ran into the room, asking for forgiveness, but suddenly noticed their masters. Oscar immediately rushed to his lordship and asked him to calm down, asking what he was doing. He begged His Highness to forgive his master's rudeness with his characteristic generosity. But then he asked the crown prince how the lady ended up there. Ryan replied that she suddenly lost consciousness, so he brought her to his room. The doctor said that she passed out due to exhaustion and she just needed rest. He decided that it was all his fault. If only she hadn't overworked herself making those curtains for him. Oscar said that he would immediately call the knights to carry her. No need, replied the Duke. He can handle it himself. He sincerely asked His Highness for forgiveness for the insult and was ready to bear any punishment. It is true that today he committed a grave crime, but thanks to it he managed to have fun, and he will forgive it with his generous heart. Having received forgiveness, the Duke asked to be forgiven and took his leave first. Seeing how Kane was losing his temper, the prince understood that their relationship was clearly not an ordinary one. So this woman is the creator of the comics, or maybe she is Kaney's secret lover. Anyway, it's getting more and more interesting, but this girl looks strangely familiar. Lolita was worried about the lady's condition, and Oscar told the girl that her punishment would be determined when the princess woke up. But Kane asked not to blame her. All this happened because of him. They could all go back to their homes and rest. But the Duke interrupted Oscar. This was the only way to ease his guilt, he asked. The servants understood the master's wishes and left. The man asked Amelia to get well soon, looking tenderly at her exhausted face. He said she should at least give him a chance to make things right. The next morning, Amelia woke up to the sun's rays hitting her face. Turning her head away from the light, she suddenly discovered an unfamiliar figure in front of her, and she almost screamed, recognizing the man as His Grace, the Grand Duke. She didn't understand why he slept here. She remembered that she ran into the Crown Prince, and then, yes, now she realized that she had switched off the next moment, but seeing Caney so close, she couldn't help but wonder, upon closer inspection, if the Duke had always had such long eyelashes. And his skin was like a baby's bottom, smooth, without a single pore or imperfection. Unable to resist, Amelia reached out to the Duke and gently touched the skin on his cheekbone. But then Kane suddenly grabbed her hands and, opening his eyes, asked if she had seen enough. Addressing the girl as Her Highness seemed to put her in an even more vulnerable position. "Everything is wrong!" Amelia exclaimed, jumping up and asking His Highness what he had forgotten in someone else's room. Kane asked her what she thought he was doing there, and all night long. Amelia froze when she heard the Duke's question. Only when the bandage fell from her head did she understand. She asked Winchester not to tell her that he had stayed up all night to look after her. It took her a long time to understand. The man asked what kind of indecent thoughts were in her head, and judging by her wild imagination, she must have felt better, Amelia thanked him. She really was grateful to him. And now he asked her to get ready. Today they would have breakfast together with the Crown Prince. Ah, Amelia said, so that's how it is, not yet realizing the whole situation. But then she asked, stunned, if she was invited to breakfast. Yes, the Duke answered, she would go with him, but why? Because, he explained, the prince came to see her, Her Highness with her, asked Amelia. She knew that the craze for comics had spread throughout the empire, and fortunately, even Her Majesty the Empress was fond of comics. I heard that she has become really into them lately, apparently. Her Majesty has some questions about comics. So, Emily asked, couldn't he have come up with something or sent Ashley instead? Insulting the imperial family is punishable by death, he explained about the imperial law. If the Empress's questions are answered incorrectly, the artists may be accused of deception. The Crown Prince's sudden visit could have been to prevent them from preparing, but could she have said that she was not feeling well and avoided it? It might buy her some time, but sooner or later she would have to face this problem. By sending the Crown Prince himself, she made it clear that she would not accept refusal, that she would not be able to deceive the eyes of the imperial family, and therefore she needed to go in person. She couldn't let Ashley or any artist get into trouble because of her. She understood his lordship. But he asked not to worry about revealing his identity right now. Winchester already had a plan. Before breakfast, he asked to be introduced and introduced his distant relative, Amelia Sugar. So a good plan was to simply change the name, from Salt to Sugar. How could his naming skills be any worse? A distant relative, you say? The prince chuckled. Why is he asking? The Duke inquired. Well, when he saw her lying in his bed yesterday and immediately grabbed her by the collar, he thought they were in a relationship. What nonsense is he talking about? She was lying in the Crown Prince's bed, and His Highness grabbed him by the collar. Wait a minute, did they really fight for her? Isn't that a typical situation for a main character? She couldn't believe she had missed such a juicy scene. She would definitely have to ask Lolita about it. She apologized for the late introduction and greeted His Highness, the Crown Prince. Yesterday he only saw her sleeping face, but it was nice to meet like this. And then he asked the Duke if the one he really wanted to see had not yet arrived. The man replied, "That's not true, it's Lady Amelia, and she's the main creator of the comics." "True?" asked the prince and suggested that they sit down and talk during breakfast. Even though Amelia saw him yesterday, he is still such a handsome guy, but no matter how you look at it, this is the same crazy Raiden. She read the original and knew the truth behind that face hid a complete non-entity. Crown Prince Raiden and Grand Duke Winchester are half-brothers. Raiden was always afraid that the talented Winchester would take the throne from him, which is why they never got along. Perhaps that is why the Duke seems more tense than usual today. Although the Crown Prince wasn't exactly relaxed either, if you look at it that way. He heard that she was the one responsible for the storyline in the comics, he asked Lady Amelia. He had a ton of questions for her, but someone was waiting even more impatiently, so this time he would back off. He handed her an invitation to the Imperial Palace, but this was definitely not part of her cozy homebody plans. Then they will continue their conversation there, said the prince, turning his attention to the Duke. And next time it will be just the two of them. Raiden emphasized these words deliberately. For some reason, Amelia was tormented by vague doubts that everything was getting out of control. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Salt, the king ordered Lily to marry Count Ravioli. "What are you talking about?" she asked her father, but the king had already settled matters with the count. "What does he mean?" asked the daughter. "Without discussing anything with her, she is not yet ready for marriage. What other preparation does she need? They are already engaged," the father answered. Then, Lily asked, if she left, who would then take care of the affairs of the kingdom? "Yes, it is precisely because of them that he is trying to marry her off as quickly as possible," the man shouted. "So many employees have already quit since she started dealing with them." Mr. Rubrick, who had just turned 60, said he had not left his office for a month. He just wanted to clean up after her, but father, Lilia said, she couldn't marry this man. Lily, softening his tone in addressing his daughter, the king addressed, and at that very moment he irritably asked if she refused to obey her father's order. Lily argued timidly, saying that she already had someone she had agreed to marry. The first princess shouted that she would marry Crown Prince Cleton. Lily Salt, King Salt, was already shouting angrily, "When will you grow up? Don't you really understand that he's just waiting for a chance to swallow up the Salt Kingdom? They say that he even sold his soul for an alliance with dark magicians, but how the hell did he convince you?" "Don't you dare slander the Crown Prince," the enamored girl screamed. "He would never do such a thing." He made her a promise in a letter that he would spend the rest of his life with her. The man sighed heavily and said that even Amelia didn't cause as many problems as she did. "That damn Amelia again, Amelia, but she's not Amelia. What else do you want from me?" Lilia screamed hysterically. "Enough chatter. Marry Count Ravioli as soon as possible, she shouted that she had already said that she would not marry him. Guards, the king suddenly shouted, seize Princess Lily and lock her in the room. And lock her up so that she can't leave even a step until the wedding, he ordered. Father, she shouted, justifying herself. She didn't say that she didn't want to marry Count Ravioli, but her father no longer listened. The crown prince asked his brother, he knows very well that he appreciates talent. With a hint of threat, he asked that the young lady be delivered safe and sound to the palace. Yes, he understood, the Duke of Winchester answered dryly, not looking the man in the eyes. Well, he said goodbye to Lady Amelia, saying that they would see her at the palace. After seeing the prince off, the Duke and Princess Salt began to prepare for their visit to the palace. Lolita asked the lady if she was feeling well. Amelia asked Lolita to stop crying. She was fine. Meanwhile, the Duke reported that he had packed a few things so that they could set off. The princess said goodbye to Lolita for the journey they would see each other at the palace. Suddenly, unexpectedly, Amelia saw a hand in front of her and looked up at the embarrassed Duke. She accepted this kind and caring gesture and thanked the Duke, placing her hand in his. The very beginning of the journey was uncomfortable. The two of us in this carriage felt somehow awkward. But the Grand Duke slept so peacefully. Surely this didn't bother him at all, she wondered. When Winchester suddenly said that she would drill a hole in him, the girl realized that she was wrong. She asked if he was asleep. The prince replied that it was not easy to fall asleep when you were being looked at so intently. Although it was hard to take your eyes off his face, oh, what was wrong with him? Amelia thought with disgust. Thank God, the Duke said he was joking. They still had a long way to go, so he advised the princess to rest. She had not yet fully recovered. Amelia asked if he was worried about her. He only said this because it would be difficult for him if she fainted again, but he was embarrassed for no reason, she noticed. Besides, he was nervous. He didn't have the opportunity to say it. Thanks for the brooch and the blackout curtains. What? Your voice was too quiet, the princess mocked. She did not hear anything he said. And then the Duke suggested that Lady Amelia simply pretend that nothing had happened. She gasped. Well, since he was so magnanimous, Amelia asked him to say it one more time. Winchester said sheepishly. He had something important to tell her. But suddenly a child threw himself under the carriage, and the next moment the princess hit something soft. And when she raised her head, she realized that she had fallen right onto the Duke due to the shaking of the carriage, and he was holding her up. Sweating with worry, she said that she was truly sorry. But Kane, without showing much sign, said that everything was fine, but he thought that first she should get off of here. The princess apologized with a shudder, but then Oscar rushed into the carriage asking if they were okay and not injured. But after a pause, he asked the gentlemen why their faces were so red, as if they were about to explode. I asked if they had accidentally crashed into something. Nonsense, clearing his throat and leaving the lady behind, said the Duke, asking what was going on. As the princess was leaving, Oscar responded, suddenly a child jumped out in front of the carriage. Luckily, the driver stopped abruptly, so the child was not injured, but the condition of the wheel is. It seemed like it would be difficult for the carriage to move now. The woman said they were very sorry. It was all because of their child. Her husband knows how to fix carriages. If his lordship doesn't mind, how about staying at their house for a while? These circumstances seemed suspicious to Winchester, but he still agreed, asking to take care of them. Upon arriving at the house, Amelia was struck by how spacious the dining room was. The man explained that they used to have an inn here. Well, then it wasn't surprising, the girl replied. After thanking them for the food, she asked if anyone else lived there besides the three of them. No, only them, the woman replied. He asked, well, what the princess replied. They just prepared quite a lot of food for three, and she just wondered if they knew in advance that they were going to stay with them. Seeing the reaction of the married couple, Amelia said sadly, it was a joke, but it didn't seem funny at all. So it was a joke. They immediately breathed a sigh of relief. The man said that she usually always cooks a lot and asked them to help themselves. But Duke Kane was extremely displeased with such a sudden change in mood and reaction to Amelia's joke. With pleasure, said Amelia, starting to eat, but still something was bothering her. What was the matter? Why weren't they eating? And this greatly worried the girl. But unlike the princess, the Duke ate a piece of steak and said it tasted good. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. She was glad that he liked it and said that the young lady should eat too. Yes, she answered, and thought to herself, it's strange. It looks simply delicious, but she couldn't bring herself to eat it. She continued eating dried beef all the way in the carriage. No wonder she had no appetite. "What?" Amelia asked the Duke, not understanding dried beef. But then he kicked her in the leg. At first she was indignant, but then she realized that this was how he was trying to justify her. And she agreed, saying that in the carriage she had been snacking on one thing and then another, so that now she had no appetite at all. "That's how it is," the woman said sadly. Both Winchester and Amelia were tense about the situation they found themselves in, and the Duke clearly understood what was going on here. After dinner, the woman led the guests to the second floor, where she indicated which room his lordship could use. And the young lady could stay here. These were the largest rooms in their inn. Lolita told the lady that she would be in the room at the end of the corridor. Amelia was glad that their rooms were quite close. Kane asked when the carriage repairs would be completed. The man replied that if he started the repairs right now, they would be able to set off tomorrow. Lolita asked the lady that if anything happened, to call her and she would come immediately, but Amelia asked her not to worry. "They were all here together, so I didn't think anything could happen. The owners of the house asked them to rest." And before going to their rooms, the Duke called out to the young lady. And putting a piece of paper into her hand, he said, "She left her hairpin in the dining room." She was about to ask what kind of steak he was talking about, but then Kane cleared his throat, glancing sideways at the people watching over them. She looked at their predatory glances behind her back, but she still didn't understand what the Duke was getting at. Kane only asked her to be careful. His lordship went and wished her a good rest, and Amelia thanked him for finding the hairpin. Lying in bed, she opened the package and read that the Duke had asked her not to open the door to anyone until the following morning, not even to him. The princess didn't understand what this meant. The family was a bit peculiar, but she wouldn't call them strange. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. She asked who was there, and a child's voice answered the lady that it was Benny. "Mom asked me to bring her water and a towel for tomorrow." Amelia said she would open it right now, but froze right in front of the door. The Duke's warning frightened her, and moving away from the door, she apologized and asked him to leave everything at the door. After a while, she opened the door thinking that he was just a child, so nothing serious should happen. But she's just doing it and being careful just in case, and suddenly she looks up. There is a boy standing right above her, looking down smugly. His eyes were empty and lifeless, and after making sure the lady had left, a creepy smile appeared on his face. Horror quickly enveloped the princess. She cringed and jumped, taking a step back. The girl awkwardly reminded Benny that it was already late and asked why he was still there and hadn't left. It was eerily quiet, even too quiet for a busy house, as the boy said, "No one will come." He added sleeping pills to their food, and by that time they were all fast asleep. While they were standing, the corridor began to fill with some kind of smoke. Frightened, Princess Amelia asked the boy what kind of smoke it was. "True," replied Benny. "It would be better if she ate like the others." "What?" She became alarmed. "Someone wanted to meet her as soon as possible," the young man explained, looking at the lady with a sly squint. The strange smoke made her vision blurry, but she could clearly see him take out a rope. The boy said that if she took a little nap, she would meet them as soon as she woke up. There was a dull thud and the screeching of metal, and Amelia screamed in fright. "He just lost consciousness for a while." A familiar voice sounded. "She can open her eyes." The Grand Duke was already standing in front of the princess, saying that he would explain everything later. First, they need to get out of here in the meantime. Adults have already come running to the noise. The girl asked how he got there, but the smoke affected her and she fell asleep. She came to her senses abruptly, hearing the clatter of hooves, which was not typical for the room. Seeing that the princess had opened her eyes, Winchester asked if she was feeling better. Amelia immediately felt awkward as she realized where she had just been lying. "How is that?" she asked, and the Duke explained. She inhaled the smoke and immediately lost consciousness. The pain in her head suddenly returned. Kane asked her not to overdo it, asked why she didn't lie down a little longer. She thought it was because she had sat up too quickly, insisting she was fine and asking what had happened. Lately, there has been an increase in cases of robberies where the victim is approached under the guise of an accident, and it seems they are targeting them. Even so, they did force the child to do something like that. But, Kane replied, according to the investigation, this child is the leader of that group. "What?" she asked, stunned. "It was called Highlander syndrome. Even though he looks like a child, he is actually a grown man. So this child is not a child at all, but a grown man," she screamed in horror. But shifting her thoughts to another direction, she asked how his lordship had managed to come and save her. He definitely said that he added sleeping pills to the food. The girl tried to understand. The Duke explained that he had only pretended to put food in his mouth, but in reality he had spat it all out into a napkin. What? Amelia asked. So he knew since when, from the very beginning? Kane answered as she asked. They knew his identity before he even said anything, and on top of that, it was as if they knew they were coming. Judging by the huge amount of food prepared, and the fact that they did not eat a single piece of food they prepared themselves. But why didn't he tell her anything? But if he had acted rashly, everything would have gone wrong. That's why he asked her not to open the door and wait, but she couldn't wait even for such a short time. No, she had definitely told him to leave the towels outside the door, and still, he interrupted, it was good that she wasn't hurt. This was definitely Ryden's doing. He was planning to reprimand him for failing to secretly and safely retrieve Amelia. To carry out such a dangerous scheme for such a minor reason was irritating. Amelia thanked him. It seemed to her that she owed him an unpayable debt, but then he turned to the princess. Kane admitted that he wanted to tell her something, and she asked what it was. In fact, he wanted to tell her this after they returned to the duchy, but it looks like she too will need time to think about his proposal. And finally, he asked how she felt about returning to the Kingdom of Salt after visiting the Imperial Palace. What? Amelia asked, frozen with horror, but the comic books are still far from finished. And they just started doing curtains with Mrs. Rainey, so why all of a sudden? Could it really be, she exclaimed with pain, that it was all because she was constantly getting him into trouble? This was not so, he answered, and the princess demanded to know if this was not the reason, then what was it? Kane didn't know how long he could keep the princess's identity hidden, and more importantly, she wasn't safe around him. Then Amelia asked for 6 months, give her just 6 months, and when it's over, she will leave of her own free will. And she won't stay with him for free, she already had income from comics. So he could set a price for the room and board she would pay. Amelia only asked to let her stay with him for that time. He apologized to His Highness for the failure, and on the way to the Imperial Palace they turned everyone around and directed them towards them. The man really felt sorry, but Ryden said everything was fine. If he had fallen for such a cheap trick, he would not have been called the Wolf of the North. This should be enough to warn you what will happen if the dog does not recognize its owner. After a while, the carriage entered the Golden Gates, and through the windows, Amelia saw the Imperial Palace. The girl couldn't believe she was here. Winchester accompanied her around the palace. But the maid who greeted the guests said that only the comic book creator was allowed to enter further. Turning to Amelia, the prince said that it seemed that this was the end of his escort. He wished the princess good luck, and the girl nodded gratefully to the Duke. Calming the anxiety that was rising in her chest, she followed the maid who led her into the living room. She walked in confidently, but while waiting for the Empress, she thought about what to do, that she couldn't make any mistakes. It was announced that Her Majesty the Empress was entering, a woman who had ruled high society in her youth. And later, to make her son, Ryden Cleaton, Crown Prince, she eliminated many political enemies, Ariana Cleaton. Everything was just as described in the novel. She seemed cold and ruthless to Amelia. "It's you, Ariana, the main creator of the security rules in the mansion of the damned Duke?" asked as she came closer. "That's right," the princess answered. Her Majesty, the Empress said, "You have come a long way." Her face could not contain the joy of the meeting. She was probably tired from the journey, and suggested talking over a light snack. The princess followed her, but suddenly noticed that the Empress was dancing and humming to herself, and I was stunned to think whether this was really the same Ariane Cleaton, the bloody Empress from the novel. Sitting down at the table next to the Empress, Amelia thought she was talking about a light snack. But there was a ton of food here. The Empress asked her to eat as much as she wanted, saying that dessert would be waiting for her afterward. But before that, she would like to ask her something, Ariana said with cold interest. Addressing her as the author, she asked what she thought the ending of the comic would be. "What?" Amelia asked, wary. Amelia wondered if she had really understood her correctly. Does she really want her to reveal the ending to her and awkwardly ask what she means? "You see," the Empress explained, she had absolutely no strength to wait and ordered the author to speak quickly. And Amelia felt this pressure. If she did not give her a proper answer, she could die. Damn it, why is all this happening to her? Even when the Empress asks her so sincerely, she still doubts, Ariana asked. The soul was ready to fly out of the body from fear, but to tell the truth, the ending was already predetermined. She just needed to copy everything, but every time she turned the page, the excitement of what would happen next, how she could take away these emotions with her own hands. Are these fleeting convictions really more important than your own life? Don't you dare dishonor the honor of a former homebody. Looking at the situation soberly, she realized that the person who was now sitting in front of her was not the Empress. Now her dear reader was in front of her, and gathering her strength into a fist, she answered that she could not answer her question. "What?" Ariana asked in horror, and tensely asked again what the young lady had just said. To be more precise, even if she wanted to, she couldn't say, because the end had not yet been determined. It was not clear whether the Empress's characteristically cold side was breaking free from its shackles. But the reader's and emotional enthusiasm was stronger, she exclaimed. "Isn't it logical?" As a reader, she simply couldn't believe how such a good comic could come out when the ending was still undecided. Amelia thanked Her Majesty for her words, but explained that the characters in the comic were similar to real people. Just as she did not know that she would be summoned to Her Majesty today, so no one is able to see what awaits him in the future. The characters in the comic also write their own story, which is why the ending is still unknown. The princess's words captured the Empress's heart, and she accepted the author's decisions as an incredible fact. That's how it is. And really, such a story could not have occurred to an ordinary person. Amelia thanked her for the praise, and deep down she sighed with relief. Thank God she was lucky. After hearing her story, a wonderful idea came to the Empress's head. High society was now crazy about her comic. So how about creating and selling things from the book to fans in real life? Is she talking about souvenirs? Amelia thought. Maybe 1 or 2 items would work and she would cover all the costs, but she didn't want to do anything. The Empress asked the lady if she was thinking of refusing this. If she said no, she would be executed on the spot. Of course not, Amelia answered anxiously. She was so grateful for her kindness that she was simply speechless. Her reaction genuinely pleased Ariana, and she suggested they talk more about work during the meal. The princess thanked him and thought, asking his lordship what she should do. It seemed she had screwed up again. This story ended only after sunset, and Amelia was damn tired. Amelia was unable to go to bed and became especially sensitive before bed and was unable to sleep due to stress. Since she couldn't sleep anyway, she would think about the task the Empress had given her and why she had to create goods. She thought one of them might be blackout curtains, but the second. "Not everyone is allowed to enter this place," said a male voice behind her, and Amelia quickly apologized. But instead of any shouting or arguments, she heard laughter and raised her head. "You again, lady?" asked Crown Prince Raiden, standing before her. He couldn't calm down and stop laughing, which was already starting to irritate the princess. "Is it really that funny?" she asked. "Yes," he answered, the expression on her face. When she looked up at him in fear, it was just hilarious. She should have seen it too. "And what kind of fist is this? It is meant for him." She froze in shame. She hissed, he quickly noticed, she thought grumbling, and laughingly answered, "This can't be. Who would dare to do such a thing?" By the way, he asked the young lady what she was doing here. This place is closed to everyone except his mother. She couldn't sleep, so she went out for a walk and got lost on the way. She asked him not to tell her that she would get into trouble because of it. She asked how about they just pretend they didn't see anything. Since only the Empress is allowed to enter here, if the Crown Prince also comes here, that is forbidden. But seeing the expression on the prince's face, she backed down and said, laughing, that it was obviously not so. The more he looked at her, the funnier she seemed, Raiden said. "What?" The princess was embarrassed, but then Raiden said terribly calmly, "She is not afraid of him, the Crown Prince." She thought it was a polite way of saying she was a zero in social interactions. But suddenly her gaze fell on the unusual flowers and said, as expected, the Empress's palace was on another level. She explained that it was a flower that was blooming, and if you ate a fully bloomed flower, it could neutralize the poison. But this is a rare plant, blooming only at night. But there are so many of them here, Amelia said enthusiastically. Wealth is truly the best thing in the world. That is to say, the Empress has amazing insight. It's incredible, Raiden replied thoughtfully. She even knows about herbs. She remembered how Lily, having heard that they were good for the skin, ordered her to collect them. Remembering this, she laughed nervously and turning away muttered, "There are reasons for this." The The more he looked at her, the more shameful it seemed to him to leave her next to Winchester. Perhaps communicating with the prince had drained her energy, and now she wanted to sleep, so she asked if it was time to go inside. Already, Ryden was surprised. Yes, she answered that she was tired and wanted to sleep. It seemed the prince was disappointed. She told His Highness that if he was unhappy, he could stay outside a little longer and she would go. But first, Emilia stopped and said that it was not worth walking for too long. It looked like it would rain soon. He was left like an abandoned cat on the street and returned to the palace a few minutes later, and then he realized that her prediction had come true. "It really is raining," he said with delighted peace. Early in the morning, the princess and the duke gathered in the gazebo in the garden, and Emilia yawned sleepily. Kane asked if she had slept well last night. "Not much," Emilia replied. "Her usual bed was not here." "It's no wonder you're tired," Ryden said as he approached. "She was out for a walk at such a late hour. So, if he knew about this, then he shouldn't have called her so early. Hey, Crown Prince, you don't like her, do you?" She was walking, the Grand Duke thought warily, looking at his brother and the princess. He was bothered by the fact that she went out for a walk alone yesterday. "Mother was delighted," Ryden said, and as a token of her gratitude, she wanted to treat them to tea and invited them here. They thanked His Highness and were glad that the Empress liked it, but she thought about it. Seeing them sitting next to each other like this, they looked surprisingly similar, as if they were brothers. The prince said it was a rare tea that had only recently been brought from the continent, and they should drink it before it got cold. Groaning, Ryden said he had a question for the young lady and moved closer. And then he asked how she knew it would rain last night. She explained that she guessed it by the halo around the moon. She seemed to be very knowledgeable about herbs, and it seemed like the young lady was educated in many areas. He interrupted, answering, the young lady had loved to read various kinds of books since childhood, and in fact, she was not so well educated. "Well, it seems that the Grand Duke is her representative," Kane replied. "The young lady has lived in seclusion for a long time without debuting in high society. She doesn't know the rules of etiquette, and he conveyed her words only so as not to offend His Highness. Even so, she ended up being made out to be ignorant. Well, as long as the Crown Prince doesn't ask questions, she's fine." "Well, well," Ryden said disappointedly, "the tea's gone cold." "Tea that gets cold," she repeated and exclaimed enthusiastically. "Yes, this is it." They returned to the imperial palace and Lolita ran after them, calling out to her mistress. Emilia missed Lolita very much, and the maid thought that she was probably tired from the journey. She really wanted to lie down quickly, and Lolita took her quickly to the room. She would give her a massage. But then the Duke grabbed Emilia's hand and asked if they seemed to need to talk. "What?" Emilia was taken aback. He just called her by her name and not princess, and she had nothing to say to him. But he had something to say, and he shot a glance at Lolita, hinting to her to leave. Then the girl hurried away, saying that she would go into the room, not giving Emilia a chance to react. And then Kane dragged her along with him to walk, but did not answer her questions along the way. Following the man, she looked around, because she didn't know that there was such a place in the duchy. Finally, he let go of her hand and called her name again, the Duke making Emilia nervous. She understood this even in the palace, but why did he continue to call her by name when they were alone? Then he asked if she had accidentally walked alone with Prince Raiden yesterday. "Yes," Emilia answered quickly. "It so happened that they took a walk together." He asked where. "In the Empress's garden," Kane asked. "So they talked, of course," she answered. "It would be strange to just walk in silence." Now Kane understood. He noticed that Ryden was interested in the reason, so that was the reason. "What's wrong with you?" the princess asked his lordship in surprise. Apparently, after their conversation, he became interested in her intelligence. "From now on," said Kane, "walk around the palace only with him. Under no circumstances walk alone." "Why so strict?" the princess was taken aback. "You never know," the prince muttered. "What if the crown prince decides that the princess is a good conversationalist and wants to keep her for himself?" Emilia asked what, and was about to say that it couldn't be, but her common sense finally returned to her. Considering how Ryden is an obsessive psychopath in the novel, it's entirely possible. She agreed that she would do so, but Winchester asked her not to worry too much. Even if the crown prince asks her to stay in the palace, she has already made a contract with him. Agreement? Emilia was taken aback, raising her eyebrows, and then she remembered how she had asked to give her 6 months. Although they had agreed verbally, she must pay all living expenses for 6 months in the Duchy of Winchester. Even the crown prince won't be able to easily break this agreement, and he'll probably put everything in writing and send her the agreement itself. She also wanted to ask his lordship if there was a mineral in the empire that maintained temperature. He said that she should know about it better than anyone, shouldn't she? The princess was surprised. She personally destroyed the core of the magic tower with its help, really, Partanium? That's right, but in the lands of the magic tower there is a Partanium mine. Thanks to her help in restoring the tower's ravine, she had the privilege of hearing the tower. And behind me is a reliable sponsor, Empress Cleton, so there shouldn't be any problems with processing. With this arrangement, the production of thermoses was quite feasible. From that day on, she was absorbed in preparing souvenirs of the damned Duke, a mission given by the Empress. And after some time, Lolia brought news that an envelope had arrived from the magic tower. She asked the lady if this was the same cup that kept the liquid warm. Yes, that's right, she answered enthusiastically, accepting her right to wish that the tower would provide the required amount of Partanium. They also provided a manufactured sample for testing. It looked like an ordinary cup. When they add the portrait of the damned Duke and his signature, it will be a real treat. But first, she needed to test the function and decide on the design. She was planning to release a small batch. Thermoses are expensive to produce, and their rarity is important. As souvenirs, Lolita recalled the rush for curtains, which they barely managed to cope with. She recalled that they even asked for help with packing because there weren't enough hands, and it was really hard then. And so, after half a day of testing, it turned out that the water was still so hot that steam was coming out of it. A complete success. With such a cup you can drink tea that never gets cold. It's probably because it's made of mineral, so it has better thermal insulation than the thermoses she used in Korea. The thermos test is complete. All that remains is to submit the quantity for production. She asked me to attach this estimate and send it. 100 pieces will definitely be enough, Amelia worried. Of course, Lolita answered the lady. What could happen? Okay, then she will draw a sketch for a thermos after working in a small business in Korea. You'll learn everything from accounting to design. Now it's time to show off your skills. The capital of the Empire of Kletan, the underground auction of Hesse, the man of the story about the highlight of this evening. The last slot was a thermos mug based on the comic book Safety Rules in the mansion of the damned Duke. It looks like this is the very same thermos mug that was making a lot of noise. It glows blue, like a magic lamp. One of the noblemen was worried he simply had to return home with this thing. His dear wife wanted this mug, and he asked her not to worry, promising that he would do everything possible to get it. So the bidding has begun. Limited edition thermos mug Safety Rules in the mansion of the damned Duke. The starting price was already huge, and now it has skyrocketed even higher. If this continues, he will have no chance at all. But then knights burst into the auction, ordering everyone to stand in the name of the Grand Duke of Winchester and arrest everyone who was trading illegally. What? Why now? The man thought fearfully. Many were arrested on the spot. Their arms were twisted. He asked permission to pass and step aside a little. Suddenly someone pushed him and the mask flew off his face. He apologized and the man forgave the stranger. He watched as the unknown man, along with a crowd of other nobles, disappeared out of the exit. Due to the near stampede, he checked his pockets, but his heart suddenly sank. The wallet was nowhere to be found. He remembered the man he had bumped into and realized that he was a pickpocket. Because he did not flee with the others, the knights of the duchy caught up with him and detained him. "No, wait," he shouted anxiously. "He just got robbed." That wallet contained his entire fortune. All those captured at the auction were thrown into a carriage and assigned a warden for their souls. The man turned to the gentleman knight and he asked him to speak. He explained that he hadn't bought anything and that his sick wife was waiting for him at home. He asked if he could let him go, begged, but the knight explained that there were no exceptions even for nobles. Since the purchase did not take place, after a short interrogation, he will be able to leave by paying a fine. But he didn't have a penny. He had just been robbed by a pickpocket. But they had an imperial decree. This is absurd. He just wanted to please his sick wife. The princess was briefed on all the events of the last few days, and Kane asked what she would do now. But to be honest, Amelia herself didn't really understand what to do in this situation. Lolita entered and informed the lady that dinner was ready, and then greeted His Serene Highness the Grand Duke. Amelia said it was all for a piece of bread and suggested eating first. "So be it," Kane replied. And then the princess asked his lordship if he had not yet had dinner. Perhaps he would join her. "It's okay," she asked Lolita. Of course, she answered. There's plenty of food prepared, you just need to add one more utensil. Well, it was also impolite to refuse an invitation to dinner, the Duke replied. And Lolita said, by the way, she set the table in the garden. The lady said that she wanted to breathe some fresh air. The Imperial Palace was really nice. You can dine in such wonderful places. If the lady wished, upon returning to the mansion, she could dine in the garden from time to time. True, Amelia held it out teasingly, but the Duke only asked her to eat it before it got cold. Well, you're embarrassed, aren't you? She remarked laughingly, and asked him not to think of going back on his words later. Suddenly she heard some noise and asked what it must be, answered Kane. They are leading criminals. She was surprised by the criminals. The Duke explained that the palace had issued a decree ordering a large-scale crackdown on those involved in illegal gambling or auctions. She gasped in disappointment. It was so unfair that the man did not give in and continued to shout to be heard. Noticing the gentleman dining in the garden, the man looked pitifully at Amelia. The princess shuddered when she met his gaze. That man just met her gaze, she thought uneasily. Damn, she had a bad feeling she was going to get into trouble again. Deciding to avoid this, she asked the Duke if he had probably already eaten and suggested leaving here, but Kane had not finished eating yet. Then the princess unceremoniously ordered him to finish eating faster and more quickly. And then, the detained man finally asked the lady to listen to him. Amelia tormented herself on the one hand. She wanted to help, but on the other hand, she didn't want to get into trouble again. The man looked at him with hope, and the knight only waited for the lady's decision. Realizing that she was not paying attention to him, he again remembered his sick wife. The next moment he broke free from the knight's grip and ran towards the lady. The knight shouted, "Catch this criminal quickly!" But suddenly the man tripped and fell right in front of them, and then a knight crushed him from above. Kane asked if she was okay. Yes, the princess answered. She was just a little scared. He begged without giving up, asking to be heard at least once. Amelia was a kind soul, and it was hard for her to see people suffering. It was a struggle between the head and the heart, but it hurt, but she didn't want to get involved in trouble. And then she asked to let him go. What? Asked Kane. Amelia explained that listening would not waste money. She suggested that his lordship at least find out what was going on. Thank you, the man said, stunned. And so, under the supervision of the knights, a conversation took place. He introduced himself as Baron Fabren, and he told about the reason why he ended up at the underground auction. It was a very sad story, she thought. It seemed that things were more serious than she thought. The Duke argued with the lady, why don't they make another batch of those same comic book mugs? What? She was surprised. Amelia understood that this was the only way to solve the problem. But when does she get to rest? A few days later, at the Empress's palace, she said that rumors were circulating throughout the empire about the production of mugs in huge quantities. She asked if it was true. Amelia lowered her head in shame under Ariana's pressure. And yet, she started this business, so it's up to her to sort it out. It was quite understandable why she thought that, but they don't make mugs. My lady, the Empress said coldly, and she knows very well what the consequences of lying in her presence are. She asked how she would explain the newspaper headlines, and she warned that if she decided to deceive her, she should immediately abandon this idea. She has already sent people with their eyes and checked everything. But this was not a lie. What they are producing now is something completely different, having borrowed only the function of the mug. The object that borrowed the function, she asked. Yes, Princess Salt answered enthusiastically. Thermoses are being made in the Magic Tower now. A few days ago, Amelia was thinking that making mugs wasn't that difficult, and producing additional limited edition mugs with comic book illustrations is a betrayal of the readers who own these products. But it is also wrong to ignore the sad story of Baron Fabren. Is there any good solution? She remembered that Braun wanted to serve his wife soup, which would remain hot until the last spoonful. And since we're talking about this, an ideal option has emerged, creating a thermos. The Empress asked what this thing was for. Amelia explained that a thermos, like a mug, keeps the temperature of its contents. But thanks to the airtight lid, it is suitable not only for drinks, but also for storing food. And the appearance of the item is also different from what Her Majesty has. It sounded reasonable, but she didn't understand why mass production was needed rather than a limited edition. Due to the growing popularity of the comic, scammers have proliferated, reselling the mugs at inflated prices. That's why she deliberately spread rumors to lower the inflated price of the mugs. It's understandable, but is it really necessary to go that far? Isn't it possible to catch everyone involved? This is the first comic book to be introduced to the empire, and any events surrounding it could shape the image of the entire industry. If the situation is not corrected at the initial stage, the comics industry may disappear forever. She definitely had a point. There was no need to create a bad precedent related to comics. Moreover, if the products based on her comic, which she sponsors, become a good example, that will be even better. Ariana agreed and said that she would deal with the problem herself. Amelia thanked her. Reading the news after the creation and release of the thermoses, the Baron asked his wife if she liked it. "Of course," she answered, coughing. "I really like it. Send it before the official release." What a kind soul. It was all thanks to his efforts, she thanked her dear one. And the man, crying, replied that he was ready to do anything for her. But that same night he seemed to become empty. His wife's condition had been deteriorating lately. And recently he lost all his wealth and they can't afford treatment at all, so it's not surprising. Having poured alcohol into himself, he hit the table. No matter how awkward he was, all that was left for him to do was to visit his mother as soon as possible and ask for help. And the next day, a magician arrived at the Empress's palace and asked the lady to save them. "What, save? What's going on?" she asked the owner of the tower, almost jumping away. Traders flocked to the magic tower and buy up thermoses as soon as they produce them. Moreover, they stated that the mages would not be able to leave the tower until they purchased the required amount. They have been blocking the exit for several days now, but this has already angered the princess, and she asked if he was serious.